Who wants to go with the company that has connections with cities in this building? Of course. But okay. But I have no doubt we're gonna get, a good amount of.
No.
People.
Other than that.
I thought this, and I thought, well, maybe it's just plastic. No.
No.
Let's just sort of read all that.
Or our number two, or if needs,
Right,
or
really.
legally obligated to
You know.
hold public hearing, but that shouldn't be done because the decisions are the same.
Yes.
I'll indicate that, but I would still give everyone 1, 2, 3.
What was your name? I also said, don't drop my name.
Yeah.
Help you.
Yeah.
Other than
That might hurt you.
I don't know, when you feel it's right, you can also do a 5-minute break for these guys, depending on who's there for that project. Just to clear out the room so we can then still keep it.
Right.
So, I used to know that.
No. Not when all those came through, we're like, we're not
Oh
doing
my goodness, we might be
anything.
pulling a long, the city's been pulling some long meetings recently.
Sure.
They've been getting in at 11, but I'm like,
And I don't
maybe we'll
think
be
you ever
going on
said it.
11.
No, I would never do that to you.
So we rescheduled it further out.
Catherine might be a little late.
Yes, we're gonna have to be.
Only because I've driven by it.
We'll have to reevaluate if it makes the most sense to do
Because I
that.
know I was talking to the other three about it, so I apologize.
No problem. You are our VIP for that. We want to make sure you're part of it.
I wasn't over there.
Okay, thank you.
Yep, no problem.
No, I just went a few blocks away.
He's doing great.
Yeah.
He's standing. Yeah.
Really?
It looks like real.
Oh yeah, she's
Yeah.
crawling all over.
Those never
So
come- those never-
it's mom and Caitlin walking around, following her. Oh, I don't know if you want me to do the similar thing about the general. I think we should all do that for the performances, but do you want me to do that? Okay.
Yeah, I think that's.
So we'll step in for regular public
Get
comment.
all.
We encourage those who don't have an on the so we can get the agenda. Hello, sir.
Hello, people.
Did you like?
So, couple of minutes late,
No
a
problem.
minute late.
Jim, you know, I'm expecting that.
Catherine's on her way. She just texted, so she would be a little late.
These police have it blocked off, but fortunately went around the back way.
Yes.
They should have just driven up the street a little bit.
It's 6:30, so we'll start tonight's meeting. The January 29 meeting of the Joint Board of Appeals. Roll call taken.
Yeah, I got it.
Okay. Everybody had a chance to read last meeting, the minutes of September 26th.
I move to accept the minutes as written.
Support.
Have a motion support. Anybody else approve? Say aye.
Aye.
Well, minutes approved. Next on the agenda is public comment for something that's not already scheduled on the agenda. And you've seen the agenda in the back table there. So if you want to wait until that specific item, you can speak to that now. Or if you have anything else that's not regarding, it's not on the agenda, now is the opportunity to speak. Okay? So we've got 5 public hearings scheduled this evening. The first is a request from Harmony Hall to consider a side yard and rear yard setback variances for the property at 219 North Saginaw. We're looking at putting a storage shed.
Right, well, here. If you're ready?
I am.
Okay. So the application is located at 219 South Saginaw Street regarding Harmony Hall. They're looking for 2 variances regarding a location of a shed located 7 feet off, or would be located 7 feet in the required setback from the rear and side yard. So this is over on Saginaw Road, south of the railroad tracks. This is an aerial of that subject property, so they utilize two parcels, invisible lines. And essentially what you have there is industrial wrapping around the property. To the right is a marijuana processing facility. You have marijuana facility over here as well. And then you have lumber truss over here, and then you have various different residential single-family properties there to give you some context to what's being proposed. Zooming in, some different factors to think about when we're looking at the overall site. So there is an existing building right here, and right here, and right here, pretty much on the zero lot line, and they have been that way for quite a long time. So those are very specific features that we're talking about specifically later. We'll get into regarding fire separation. Typically, we want a 10-foot separation from building to building. So in the event of a fire, the entire road doesn't go down very quickly. So one of the things to consider potentially is looking at the other corner of the parking lot over here. I had talked to the applicant at one point about that relocation and that being acceptable for them. There's about 11 feet, it seems like, from the parking lot edge to their actual property line, and then another about 10 feet to the neighboring south residential's accessory building there. And so trying to maintain some level of separation. So as you may or may not be aware, the property is zoned as I-1. They're proposing the accessory structure in the rear next to their dumpster enclosure, which is that northern part of that site. That's the original location. I went over what's surrounding that property. They're looking to utilize this structure for storage of equipment and related maintenance related to Harmony Hall. There are some legal non-conforming buildings that are off of the property that do come into play. As I mentioned, there is a fire code looking at 10 feet separation. There is adequate parking on site from a calculation standpoint, but the applicant would like to not take away too many parking spaces, even though they have some available. And then they are proposing improved building materials to meet that level of sufficiency. So right in front of you is two different variances, so the rear and the side yard, specifically for the location of the shed. So this is a concept pictures of what the shed would potentially look like with that improved building material. So instead of the green space is the original, which the ZBA can consider for approval tonight, is that specific location, versus the relocated, which is the blue blob on the bottom. That's what's proposed because we have less fire separation issues regarding those existing buildings. And so that's what, when I refer to as the other optional location, that's what I'm talking about, is that southern location that doesn't have the cluster of other buildings on that property line. So the applicant is looking to not eliminate any parking spaces that would prohibit it. Because of the existing buildings that were located nearby, we reached out to our building department and they provided some context regarding the use group and the fire safety separation concerns associated with it. If you want to be located within 3 feet, there's other improvements you should make to that building to ensure fire resistance. So relocation helps with all of that. So as a quick reminder to the Zoning Board of Appeals, for this variance request, there are 5 standards. We have to find all 5 standards in support to approve the variances, as opposed to one needs to be specifically mentioned to justify denial. And so the first standard talks about the variance is unreasonable or would unreasonably prevent the property owner from utilizing the property. The applicant is not looking to eliminate any parking in support. The property is relatively small for an industrial property. Granting this variance would allow them to do storage, whereas it's pretty common for commercial and industrial properties. And the relocation to the south allows for that 10 feet separation between buildings, but still would be located in that required setback that we're talking about. In opposition, we're talking about, it's not specifically a corner lot, so they could potentially meet those different parking requirements by putting it farther in the parking lot, but it would interfere with the flow. Number 2 is talking about the proposal does justice to those who are in the same zoning district classification, and that a lesser relaxation wouldn't be appropriate. So in support, the applicant is a relatively small industrial property. With the relocation, it's asking for a lesser variance in some ways because you're only looking for a 1 foot setback from the side property line to the south. So it'd be a 1 foot or 1 foot to the south, and then you would still maintain a 7-foot rear. But because of that extra space at the bottom of the property, it would still meet some of those setback requirements. As we mentioned in opposition, we do worry about the 10-foot separation between buildings and that there is the option to relocate. 3 is talking about unique specific to the property, not a general condition of the area. It is a very relatively small industrial site. There are neighboring properties that are legal non-conforming buildings that are outside of this property control that are rather unique. In opposition, you can take the stance there is anything unique. 4 is talking about the need for the variance was not created by the applicant. As I just mentioned, there are some neighboring buildings that are legal nonconformities. That's not controlled by the applicant in the proposal. They do have control over where they're proposing to locate that shed. The last standard is talking about the spirit of the ordinance and ensuring public safety and welfare. So specifically in support, relocating it to the south would allow for that 10-foot separation between buildings and would lessen the variance that's being requested. As opposed to an opposition, we're looking at different parking associated with taking up those parking spaces. With that, the applicant is here tonight. If we have any questions for him, otherwise I'll defer back to you, Mr. Chairman, to open up the public hearing. As a friendly reminder for audience, we do have a 3-minute timer for different public comment. If you could please just acknowledge you'd like to say something, the chairperson will acknowledge you, and then we'll start your 3-minute timer. There's a little dinging noise that will go off. If you could just wrap up your thought with that, hearing that. And with that, I'll turn it over to you.
I'm going to open the public hearing regarding this issue. If anybody likes to speak to it. Who is the applicant? Okay, thank you. Including yourself, unless you're driving.
Yeah, we're just looking to purchase a storage building for Harmony Hall. We're part of Lapeer County Community Mental Health. This is our clubhouse program. And we're just looking for, we had 3 external sheds around the property. We're looking to consolidate all the storage into one specific building. The location is be in the corner of the parking lot would have little impact on our current parking situation due to the current layout of the parking lot. Recently we had our parking lot renovated, and which led to some movement of our old sheds, and one of them was in disrepair. So we're just looking to just get rid of all of our old sheds, consolidate it into one attractive shed, modern shed, and then also with the newer building materials. And we plan on using it just for storage for things at the clubhouse. Maybe some lawn equipment, some salad bar stuff like that we use as the clubhouse.
The neighbor's building directly to your north is down now, right?
Yes, that's right.
That one's gone.
Yes.
And what's your feelings about the option 2 position going to the south with the shed?
I don't have a preferred option. I see benefits of both sides. Originally we picked the one, the green at first, that was the location of our sheds previously, before. I didn't even consider it in the south, but hearing the concerns regarding fire safety and such, there is a building on that edge of the property. So if it was in that corner, it would be close, within 10 feet of our neighbor's building. But down here to the south, there is a lot more space.
Are you storing any flammable items in the shed? Or is it conceivable that you would, gasoline? things like that?
Maybe, I guess, like a gallon gasoline for
Okay,
a lot
yeah,
more.
I just wanted to.
Yeah, I think that might be about it. Mainly, we just have mainly camping equipment and just some stuff so we can and not have storage in the offices.
Will you have electrical service to it, or would it just be a storage?
It would just be a storage shed. I'm looking for it to be built on like a platform, and so it would be built off-site, and we can just set it in the parking lot. I know I need to go through different departments for that to go forward, but it's something they would purchase pre-made and drop it. And yeah, no electric, no plumbing, nothing like that.
Senior Brian,
Yes, ma'am.
I have a question for Caitlin. Caitlin, what was the distance between the building on the north side and the other building, if you recall? What it
Um,
boiled down to?
So if we're talking about this building, which is correct, it's been demolished since then,
Yep.
that was right at the lot line.
Okay.
Has this plan been seen by the fire chief? Is he okay with fire trucks getting around the property?
It's been a long time, so I don't know that he would know,
I mean, it's where cars park right now, so
correct.
not this.
Well, the lot's accessible from two spots. So
I know the fire marshal specifically looked at it, because that's where we talked with the building official and the fire marshal about that 10-foot separation concern. I don't know that was specifically the fire chief would have been aware of that discussion.
I read Daryl Oliver's explanation here about the accessory structure. Does this fall within those requirements, the shed? About the 508-4 requirement?
No, it doesn't have that fire level of fire resistancy that he is alluding to.
Right. And if it was on the other corner, that would be a non-issue? Am I understanding that right? Or still
So
doesn't
from
matter?
the south one it is, there still is this building, but it's at least, I would say at least a few feet more this way. So the shed could be 10 feet and still be in that parking lot area and still not be within that 10 feet. Which
That's
is
what
the
I
goal.
was.
What about the building to the south, the garage, for the residential house?
Where the red's at.
Yeah.
So from the property line, they have 10 feet, and then approximately, it was somewhere between like 9 and 11 feet on their property
All
line.
right, so we're gonna have over 10 feet separation to the residential
Absolutely,
building.
yes.
Anybody else in the audience want to speak to this?
I just have a question about south,
Can we get your name for the,
Cheryl Reynolds. Cheryl Reynolds? Okay, thank you. I just have a question about the south relocation. If it's 10 foot from the lot line, is that a residence in the next lot to them?
Yes, it
to the
is.
south, yes.
Okay, so in our subdivision, you have to be 20 foot from a lot line for residential. I have no idea what it is for commercial, but if I was a resident, I would want it 20 foot from my lot line.
Can you speak to it as far as
So
industrial
the zoning
zoning?
requirements is 10 foot from the property line.
Okay, so that's different in,
That's in the city of Lapeer
it's
instead of the
different than in
town.
the city
That's
and the
right.
township.
Right,
Okay, thank you.
Anybody else? We'll close the public hearing.
Caitlin, I have some couple
Now we'll
questions.
deliberate up here.
Mr. Chair, if you
Yes.
don't mind. The original proposed position in the, oh, no, stay on that picture.
Oh.
Yes, I'm sorry. It looks like there's a couple of sheds there, or were there, I don't know if they're still there, but they were sitting in a parking space. They're not sitting on a green belt. Is that true? So how much of that, if the shed were located in that corner, would it still only take one parking space? Like those sheds, or would it extend into the,
So based on the original approved plot plan or the redesign, it would not be located in any required parking space.
but it would be sitting on the parking lot where that picture showed parking?
I think it was actually just on the edge of one, because you can see the edge of the parallel parking space line right there. And so this would.
That corner was never parking.
Yeah, that was never a legal parking
Okay.
spot from our perspective.
And there's no way to get more separation to the back building, to the large building than 3 foot up in that location?
It would appear that potentially you could, so with the shed, those are the general perimeter dimensions of it. So this northern one isn't as much concern because the building has been demoed since the application has been filed.
Right.
It's this main building here. So you can protrude into here, potentially. There isn't a part, I don't think it's part of your official parking calcs because it's just the one to the left that you count. So conceivably, you can move it other than it tightens this turning radius.
Turning rate, okay, that's a good point. Because it looks like the proposed relocation is actually going to eliminate a parking space. Is
Which
that
they
true?
have adequate parking.
Correct, I heard that. But the turning radius there, I can see that as being a problem, getting the building too far into the,
Well,
if they have buses going in there. Okay, that explains why that corner
And that
is
black
unfavorable.
square, that's the dumpster. Immediately
correct.
south of the
That's right.
proposed farm.
The existing dumpster.
the white, what's the white part? I know that, I just assumed that was,
Underneath the
This?
green.
That's the platform for the dumpster.
that's the whole entire thing,
The white is the concrete.
all the way out then. So
Yeah,
that
the
had,
concrete pad goes around this entire.
and that's not changing. It kind of gets to where I was going.
The surface is not changing material.
Okay.
It's same kind.
And the white part is not erased. I guess that's where I got.
Correct. It's
Okay,
level.
that's where I was going. Okay. I didn't think it was before, and then when you brought that up, I started thinking maybe that's a really corner there. Okay. Because I don't see any problem with the turning radius there. That's just the same substrate as the rest of the stuff. There's lots of it.
Did you comment that we would not be able to act on the relocation proposal?
You can.
Oh, we can, okay, yeah,
Yep.
all right, I misunderstood. You were talking a little quick earlier.
Any other questions, comments? Anybody want to make a motion or questions?
I just wondered what people felt about the two locations. Do you favor one or the other?
I think, I'm in favor of relocation.
I'm in favor of the relocation, the applicant's in favor, planning department's in favor. You know, it's safer, it's a safer option.
It has a little effect on the residential.
Yeah, it has a minor effect on the neighbor.
They're not keeping much in there of
Yeah,
any consequence. There's always an opportunity for a fire. I don't think that.
right.
I'm actually gonna abstain. I'm the board chair for community mental health, and I don't think it's appropriate that I vote, and obviously Harmony Hall is a program in mental health, so I'm gonna abstain.
Go ahead, Dan.
Did you write us up anything for the relocation? I think you did, because there was a 3-foot, I read somewhere.
So for the relocation, they would still need the 7-foot variance setback on the rear.
To the east property line.
That's correct. I would still grant that one in full, just so then the applicant, you have some wiggle room, because the dimension specifically from that edge of, because the buildings do come back, it's like 3 or 4 feet or
Okay.
something. But if you grant a variance to that extent, they can still work with the building department on that 10-foot separation that they're looking for.
And that's referred to as the rear yard setback.
That's right, sir.
And then nothing on the south?
So
Do you
for
really
the
need more?
south, based on my approximate location, so from the parking lot envelope to the property line, it appeared to be 11 feet, so they wouldn't need a variance for that relocation.
So just.
So 7 to the
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion to grant a variance of 7 feet from section 7-8.03, table 7.08.2, which states there is a minimum rear yard setback of 10 feet. Is that good enough? That wasn't exactly the motion.
That's all right. You got the name. Okay.
I second.
Oh,
No, I didn't. She didn't need that.
we have a motion and a second. Any other comments, questions?
You don't have to state to go to the second play to the south, because this variance is only going to allow them to go to the south, correct?
Correct.
There you go.
That was my question, thank you.
Roll call, Ken? Is it necessary?
Yep, sure. You want me to do it?
Yes.
Okay. Paul,
Aye.
Lynn? Aye. Jeff,
Aye as well.
Catherine's abstaining, right, Catherine? That's correct. Eric
Yes,
and Dan.
Yes.
Okay, motion passes.
Good luck with your project.
Thank you. The next item on the agenda is a public hearing for a business that, it's still scheduled as a public hearing for Adam and Eve Adult Milk Cookie Store. However, the city commission,
Planning Commission.
planning commission, dismissed that for their own reasons. So it's on the agenda, but at this point, it's not going to proceed in that current location as proposed. But you can still speak to it if you wish to.
So you're opening?
Yes. Open the public hearing on the Adam and Eve proposal.
Mr. Chair, I'll comment.
Okay.
I would have approved it.
Closing the public hearing. The third item tonight is another public hearing, a request from Lapeer Villas to consider a variance regarding a lot split located at 1710 Rustic Drive.
So this is a two-part variance, all indicating to the same proposal. So one of them is regarding the lot to depth ratio 4:1, and then also making sure that you're not creating a parcel that doesn't have street frontage. However, it's even more fun than that. So
Specifically the frontage. Doesn't
correct,
say anything about access.
that's right.
Thank you.
So specifically, this is the current subject property in its entirety. So as you may be aware, this is Baldwin Road. There's a medical facility over here, and the public frontage actually curls into the property and is this little stub. So their frontage is literally this 60 some odd feet.
The entrance drive.
That's right.
Correct.
That is their public frontage.
Okay.
So sins of your father, however you want to go
That's
about it.
why it was confusing.
So that it's a very technical nuance on all those different factors, which we will get into. So this is an old aerial, as many of you may be aware. I'll show you the site plan shortly, but this is a very active construction site and already has some completed building with tenants for an apartment complex. But as I mentioned, this is the the medical complex. If you're looking from 24, this is PNC Bank. You have the gas station over there and apartments. Myers just over the corner here. So this is the site plan, best I could do with the current site. So they have completed 1, 2, 3, 4 buildings to the north. As opposed to south of the access drive, we have those 3 current buildings currently in construction phases. And then they're still reviewing for the site plan amendment at a clubhouse. That's what the green hammer is. So that is
Where's the
pending
green hammer?
right here.
Oh, thank you.
Still on the south side.
Oh, can't see green, sorry. It's a big colorblind.
I couldn't put all the colors of the rainbow on there. What really fit was just
We're
having a
Michigan
hard
fans
time.
up here, we can't see green.
That's right.
Oh. That's mustard.
Couldn't do blue, but yeah. So what the applicant is proposing is to split the parcel, specifically where you can see the north half and the south half. That's the proposal. And so the frontage is this area here, that 105 feet. And they're proposing essentially the south part of the access drive to be the new stopping point. So, going back, so they're looking at essentially this being the lot split. So it's consistent with where the easement component is. So some facts to be aware of, the applicant is proposing this lot split. They already have a 1710 rustic drive, which is that maneuvering access lane that goes from the Baldwin frontage all the way through the property, and would potentially continue onward as development continues in that area. So they're proposing those components. The applicant indicated their justification, talking about financing and things of that nature with the 2 different parcels and 2 different phases of their development process as part of their request. The property owner would ensure that they would put in place a shared maintenance and easement agreement to ensure that both parcels are not severed, or if it were to be sold off at one point in time, they would regain access to that frontage and public roadway. The project is zoned RM1. You have RM1 to the north, and then to the east, or to the west and south, you have single family, and then the office to the south and to the west is residential, east is the medical office complex. So as I mentioned, there are the two different variances. So the 4-to-1 ratio, going quickly back, so the 4-to-1 on this specific parcel would be this amount of frontage consistent with the depth of the property. That's how you read 4-to-1 ratio. So you want 10 feet of frontage, 40% width or depth of that lot. That's what that's talking about.
When you said this amount, are you talking about the serpentine or are you talking about the little?
So along irregular lines, it is supposed to be the average of
Right,
cutting across.
I understand that part. You weren't talking just about the wedge, the little spot in addition to that. Is that included?
That's part of that.
Okay,
Yep.
thank you.
So if you were to approve both variances, we would be approving the lot split as they have defined it, having the two different parcels saddling that rustic drive feet or maneuvering lane area. So as the applicant indicated more in depth in their official response, but they're proposing to have the property split into two. They have new construction buildings, and then they're working on those different current lots. The current mortgage holder for that construction loan, it's looking at, again, the financing components of that construction and regarding that northern versus the southern part to make it so then that's a feasible project. The applicant, as I mentioned, is proposing to have that shared maintenance agreement and access so that way we can still uphold the purpose of those provisions. As a friendly reminder, so we have the same 5 standards as an earlier discussion regarding variance. So standard 1 looks at that the variance would unreasonably prevent the property owner from the permitted use. So as I mentioned in their response, they're looking at it for different financial components associated with it. They are in a unique situation regarding the current construction, past construction with the oddity of their non-conforming lot as previously developed. That currently doesn't meet that 4-to-1 ratio as it currently sits. So in support, they already have half of that complex developed. Half of it is located in that already divided access area. You have an opposition. They are allowed to continue to utilize as approved by the site plan for multiple family. So from a use perspective, could they continue to do that? And it's due to financial components. And the applicant is choosing not to make Rustic Drive that public roadway, which would change that split conversation. Number 2 is talking about that the applicant, as well as other property owners in the zoning district, and that a lesser relaxation of those standards would not injure others. And so in support, the applicant doesn't have control over the odd remainders and that connection of that Baldwin Road and that legal nonconforming status of that existing parcel, where they would otherwise have larger frontage in most of our other multiple family development parcels. In opposition, it is an existing parcel, and we would potentially be increasing some of the nonconformity components, not the 4-to-1, but access specifically to that public roadway. 3 is talking about the unique circumstances to the property, not the general condition of the area. And so in support, it is very odd that they have a remainder of a road dead end in a way that they're proposing through their property. And they have that legal non-conforming lot, and that already exists as a non-compliant for the 4-to-1 ratio. In opposition, we are creating that split, which creates some more specific circumstances. 4 is talking about the variance is not created by the applicant. So kind of indicating again, they have their different multiple family development. They have a north cap and a south cap with their access way in the middle, and utilizing it for funding purposes is one of the reasons for the request. Specifically talking about the support, they do not have control over that remaining portion of that site, that legal non-conforming status of how do they connect to that roadway. And it's not very common with all of our other parcels zoned multiple family to have that odd end. Otherwise, in opposition, the split, they could consider rustic drive and have that going to being a public roadway. 5 is talking about the spirit of the ordinance, the intent being that we want to ensure that there's public access, so a portion, once we approve a lot split, it could be sold off separately, and so ensuring that everyone maintains access to some type of public road frontage. So in support, the applicant is proposing to have a shared agreement, as we mentioned previously, to ensure that access is maintained for the life of that parcel being created. In opposition, it's a functional component talking about the narrowness of different lots and creating more irregular parcels. And so we would be continuing irregular parcels, and we would be guaranteeing that there's no specific access for one of those, as far as meeting that ratio. So with that, those are the standards.
Thank you, Kate. Open up the hearing for this issue.
Good evening, my name is William Colbert. I'm here representing the developer owner. I just wanted to clarify. We're actually proposing that the north side of that drive be the lot split, not the south.
Oh, sorry.
Yep, no problem. As we indicated in our application, the whole reason we're here is because the current lender, Mercantile, is not going to provide any further construction funding for the second phase. We already have approval from Choice One. We're just waiting on the lot split, and obviously to get the lot split, we need 2 zoning variances, and then we can close on that construction property and begin with the construction process again. Again, like was mentioned, we propose to have a shared cost and easement agreement for maintenance for that property, so that both parcels will have access to, and we'll share in those costs. That's really all I have to say, unless you have any questions.
Is there any vested interest from financing the company one to that south lot, to that south parcel? I mean, do they have a lien on the whole property? Or
Correct,
just-
it's on the whole property, and what they're willing to do is, if we get the lot split, they'll just remain on the first one, and
So
then,
they're agreeable.
correct, and Choice One will give us the construction loan on the second one. Without the split, we're not gonna get any financing for it.
And ownership of the 2 lots, if we were to approve the split, remains constant.
Correct.
But that's not a condition of their variance.
Oh, I understand, I'm just trying to understand the complexity.
Correct. As it stands now, we can't get anything further from Mercantile.
Just to go into the far distant future for residents of these north and south.
Uh-huh.
Obviously, there's a view of having a clubhouse here for, I would imagine, for everybody who lives there.
Correct.
My college days, my first apartment, I was in a apartment that it was just like this, it got split in 2. And then ended up 2 owners on either side warring with each other.
Yeah, it won't be,
So-
again, it'll be one, and what we plan on doing then is having as part of that shared would be the shared usage of the property with the parks and the clubhouse and all that, so there's no issues.
That's not like an HOA. This is much different than that. The
It's just a
shared
park.
usage is
Correct.
because it's a multifamily. Okay.
Correct. But the idea is very simple.
Anybody else in the audience want to speak to this? Close the public hearing and we'll deliberate up here.
Just had a couple of questions, maybe. The road coming off Baldwin, is that a public street? Up to their property line is a public street?
Yep.
Does not extend around the corner towards the medical facility though, does
No.
it? Okay.
That's why there's a stop sign there.
Well, I guess that.
It
I must
it
never
was a
stop
big-
there.
It was a big thing for a bit.
Okay.
They did not want the stop sign. No, legally it's gotta be there because this is where our road starts and your private property.
So Rustic Drive would remain a private road
Correct.
and access to the property beyond this property to the west would have to rely on a private road access to get to it.
Correct. And it's very nice of the applicant that they are ensuring that connectivity to whoever that may be.
Is that something
potentially.
in writing that the city will have any leverage to make sure that access is still there?
I have to verify, it's been a while since I looked at that
It's
site
so-
plan. I believe we did look at the connectivity component associated with it.
It appears to me that the street will, now with correction, will go with the south parcel.
Correct.
Okay, so, yeah, go ahead.
He explained to me that it was part of the original approval back in 2019, and it's in the deed.
When we
Okay.
purchased this property, this was an easement.
It's an easement,
So
okay,
it's,
that's all.
it
that's
stays
all.
there and we didn't change it.
And
It gives access to the west side.
that brings up, so we're splitting the property. How do we guarantee that easement goes along with the south parcel if we approve the split? Is that something that the city has to be concerned with, or in the deeding? It's in the deed of the overall
Exactly,
property,
correct,
but when we
exactly.
split it, how do we guarantee that that part of the deed
Well, you have,
verbiage goes?
We would just put it in again.
Okay,
yeah.
It
It would be tied.
It would be
Okay.
tied in, yes.
okay, I just want to make for sure that it doesn't, that verbiage doesn't stay with the north parcel and they don't own the road.
Correct.
No,
Okay.
We didn't change that from the beginning.
All right,
And
that's all I
then,
had.
and that parcel does have frontage on the mill. It goes that far. It's not a landlocked parcel.
The one behind it? Okay. For now.
I'm okay with that. The lot put quarter than the fuels there, so I don't have any problem with that. I don't know if you guys want to talk about the public street part of it now, or do you want to separate those?
Well, I just have a question. I mean, so it's a private street, but is it built to city specs?
Yes,
Yes.
that's another thing. They asked us to build it for use specs because you guys are gonna take them over eventually. So it's for use specs, yes.
Yeah, we observed it, because if we don't observe it during construction,
Yes.
then
And bonded as
Correct.
such? I mean, it'll be
Yes,
built as such?
exactly.
Should
It's been bonded there.
We have a few subdivisions for that circumstance.
Yes, we do.
I think we need to talk with, I don't know what your concern is with public street access.
Not that I just thought maybe we'd separate the two issues, they're separate in
Okay.
voting, and did we close the public meeting?
Yes.
Okay, I thought so. I didn't want to make a motion unless everybody has a chance to speak.
I read just a question on the number 2, on the public street, and actually the question that was asked was covered, so I'm good. Thank you.
Okay, well, I was just gonna move on D3, and then D4, I can wait on that. if there's
No,
any comment.
D3 request 1.
Right, of course.
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve the request from Lapeer Associates PLLC for variance to allow for the creation of 2 lots that does not meet the 4-to-1 depth to width ratio located at 1710 Rustic Drive, because it does meet all the standards in section 722.04E.
Support.
It's a complicated motion. but We know what we're voting on, as long as you do.
We have a motion and a support. Any other discussion? Take a vote, Kim?
Paul,
Aye.
Lynn? Aye. Jeff?
Aye.
Catherine? Aye. Eric?
Yes.
Dan?
Yes.
The motion passes.
Mr. Chairman, I'll go ahead and make a second motion to approve the request from Lapeer Associates PLLC for the variance to allow the proposed lot split resulting in one property that does not abut a public street located at 1710 Rustic Drive from section 7.06.3 because it does meet all the standards in section 722.04E, conditionally on the applicant providing an easement agreement for both proposed properties.
Support.
We have a motion and support. Any other discussion? Kim, take a roll call.
Paul?
Aye.
Lynn? Aye. Jeff?
Aye as well.
Catherine? Aye. Eric?
Aye.
Dan?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Excited for your project. Looks like it's doing well.
Thank you.
What's the occupancy rate of your?
100%.
Really? So how many units is that?
80. Phase 1 has 80, phase 2 is 72, but we're working, but they're starting framing next week.
Keep it going.
Thank you. We have another property here, so.
Right.
To the road, we have 24 acres. Over here.
Okay. In between, if anybody appears to leave, if your business is done, you're free to leave if you wish to. Or go to the next item. Okay. All right, the next is also a public hearing, request for Lapeer Crossing to consider a variance regarding a lot split located on vacant property at the southwest corner of Pearl Road and M24. Again?
All right, so this property is located, as discussed, at the South Lapeer Road and Turl Road, and then the exit ramp of I-69. So it is proposing with those two parcels, and regarding that lot split, change. Just to clarify, in some other project comments, it does include this corner, but as part of this specific variance, that's not included because the property line's separate, so that's why the parcel number's not there. Clarification. So it's specifically those two, but there's a later project on the agenda that includes all three. As part of that, it's undeveloped land. This is a proposed plot plan, essentially showing what a potential concept of that complex would look like, specifically looking at those different shades of yellow for various other tenants. We have a pending project later tonight to discuss in blue. So the parcel that's of concern is that doesn't meet the 4-to-1, is that one on the very, very bottom. Lightened in that lighter blue. The applicant is proposing that they'll have some type of access drive all the way down. What's nice is that they have frontage on 24, but then they also have rear access as well. There's no proposed driveway, not that that's up for our discussion tonight, but there is no proposed driveway on that 24 side. So the intent behind a lot of this parcel is to have a lot of the detention pond area to the south. So part of it is having access from a development of the entire complex. This is what the applicant's proposing, is that this makes the most sense for all parties associated with that development, that the remainder part of this parcel, maintaining the most of the drainage for the entire development, is associated with that parcel, again, outlined in that light blue. So zooming into that specifically, the blue line to the left is your frontage, as opposed to the brown line to the back is your width ratio. Due to the nuances of definition of street frontage and things of that nature, as opposed to the exit ramp specifically. So the properties are currently zoned B2 general business. They have some different B2 general business located to the east, as well as the south of 69, and then to the north, we have some different properties as well. The proposed property, as I mentioned, is maintaining that little remainder on the south side is for the detention pond component of it, in which, looking at those two parcels as they currently exist, they would meet the 4-to-1 ratio, so they are not considered a legal nonconformity because they have the frontage on Turl Road, and that's their frontage for that back parcel. So the frontage here compared to the width here, that's the 4-to-1 ratio, and they do meet that for both properties. Now, this is considered a corner lot for all intents and purposes because there's frontage on Turl and 24. So they are specifically, unlike the other case, they're only asking for a 4-to-1 ratio because all the properties proposed have direct frontage, though they are proposing a different rear easement access to also utilize. So the applicant is proposing this collection of different combinations regarding one parcel that would be irregular shape, that would house the regional detention basin and for this overall development. And so that's what's being proposed. One variance for one of those property splits. These are the same 5 standards we've been talking about all night. So the first one, looking at would unreasonably prevent the property owner from utilizing the property. The application is proposing the overall development with one irregular spot in which you are creating a regional detention basin for the overall project. In support, the subject property is located along I-69 exit ramp, but doesn't meet the access frontage component associated with that 4-to-1 ratio. So a technical nuance essentially, but they do otherwise have access. In opposition, the applicant is choosing to divide the properties in this manner. Number 2 is talking about that other properties in the same zoning district that a lesser variance wouldn't be necessary. And so in support, the subject property is a large corner lot with more frontage access than most properties in the city of Lapeer when you're looking at pure mass on a frontage, and they have both. Usually we've only had one frontage that's very long. This project would have 2 very large frontages. In opposition, the applicant is choosing to do the land division in this method as opposed to condo or some other type of division method that would otherwise not necessarily result in the same situation. 3 is talking about the circumstances unique to the property, not a general condition in the area. The subject property is located in I-69 exit ramp regarding the frontage. There is some different topography characteristics in which help figure out the best location for the detention pond, specifically on the southern side of that property. In opposition, they are choosing to put the detention pond in there and utilize that property split, creating this irregular shape. Number 4 is talking about the need for the variances not created by the property owner and support the location of the stormwater basin and topography information isn't directly leaning towards the applicant making that decision, what makes the most feasible sense, as opposed to opposition. They are choosing on how they split up the property amongst those various different tenants. 5 is talking about the spirit of the ordinance and public safety, so in support, we do need to have stormwater management specifically for development or redevelopment, as opposed to opposition. Again, it's looking at the narrowness and redevelopment opportunities associated with that, and that would be very bizarre parcel that we're creating that would be difficult to build on. But again, it goes back to their intended use and operation is as a detention pond, not to have that southern remainder part be a location for a tenant or things of that nature. So with that, that is my analysis.
Thank you, Caitlin. Okay. Open public hearing on this particular land split request. Anybody care to speak to it, including the developer? Any questions or clarifications?
Keith Mazias with the Nature Companies, the developer of the property. Here to answer any questions you have.
So that, as proposed right now in this rendering, it, we're looking at 4 outlots.
Those are shown more for informational purposes on what could be split in the future, but as developers, we're primarily interested in developing those and holding and maintaining.
That changes what I was thinking. I don't know if you want to close public hearing, then we can talk. Finish your public hearing, then I'll ask my questions.
Thank you.
Yeah, Cheryl Reynolds, my property, residential property is directly across 24 from that. Not real happy about having 4 lots and a big lot there. Obviously, it's it's commercial property, there's not much we can do about that. But the access, I hope, is not in any future plan of being on 24. That's a congested area as it is, with the right turn lane onto Turl, right after the 69 at on-ramp to 24. And also our property across the street is having issues with water coming off of 24 into our front yard, which it comes down and then comes down because of the way they put the drain for 69. I can't see that that's going to be a concern from what you're looking at. But I do have concerns about the use of that property, obviously.
It'll be a lot more congested.
That light doesn't have a left turn.
What is your name, sir?
Reynolds,
Sure.
Gerald.
Joe.
And it's gonna
So
be.
you're next to the, east of the church, like it's the
We're, west, on the west side of 24.
Oh, west side of 20. Okay.
And you're gonna have all these big trucks, if it's my understanding, there's gonna be a building built similar to TSC, but it's got a different name.
Lane, Farm,
Lane, Arm, and.
Farm.
Yeah. You're gonna have heavy duty trucks coming on Turtle, and how long is it gonna take before Turtle is wore out?
Is that,
And you're gonna have big heavy duty lights on the parking lot and in the store, and that's gonna bother other neighbors.
Barbara Walker, 948 Turtle Road. I live exactly across from this 24 acre. We moved here over 30 years ago when Roberts wanted that, and then Walmart wanted it, and I'm really concerned that you won't, you don't have any firm offers other than Blaine's. Like, what are these other 3 stores gonna be, like another Adam and Eve type of thing? Or, I mean, well, they got on the agenda tonight.
Right.
I mean, and he makes a great point about traffic, parking
And
lights
just-
and
You
everything.
should be sticking
Oh,
to
I'm
us.
sorry. I don't mean to be rude, I'm more asking him stuff, but anyway, I've come to lots of meetings and I'm just really concerned that you don't have any commitments, or you're not willing to tell us who wants to go in there?
Again, that's not,
There's no back and forth. in
Not a
the-
discussion.
You talk to us. Yeah,
Oh,
talk to
I'm
us.
sorry.
your comments addressed to us.
Okay,
Yes.
aren't you guys concerned?
When the public hearing's over, we have our chance to address any questions that might come up.
Okay, so just know that, that a resident, a 30-plus year resident, when it was the township and annexed into the city, is very concerned about what's going on here, like, you know, I need some answers. So that's all. Thank you.
Sarah Everson Smith from Boyce Farm and Fleet, here representing the developer and our company. To answer for the zoning board, we will obviously have photometrics that meet with the city requirements for light pollution, knowing that it will be appropriate and not be pollution to the neighbors. And also, as part of our overall development, we have very, very strict restrictions on what we allow the neighbors to be, including but not limited to any city businesses and anything that's a competing use. So you can be assured that Lanes is very particular on who we allow to be our neighbors.
Let me take another question back here first.
Hi, my name is Stephanie Ashbrook. We live at 382 Turtle Road, and this would be just horrible to have this here. The turn lane would be right at our driveway. I'm concerned about when I'm out home or lawn or walking in the yard or anything with all the traffic that's gonna be there. If they put in fast food restaurants, we're gonna hear the noise from the you know, when they're talking through the drive-through and stuff. I'm concerned if it's something related to, you know, the children or, you know, the teenagers, if it could put a nightclub in there, arcade in there, something like that, that they're gonna have people there late in the night being loud with their cars going up and down the road. It's 55 miles an hour, they go 60, 70. I'm asking, are you gonna change the road there, you put a turn lane in?
That's for the site plan and the development. We don't know.
Well, I'm just asking you the questions.
Cindy, I got a question for you. What's the speed limit on Turtle Road?
What?
What's the speed limit on
55.
Turtle? Huh?
55.
On one side.
Where is it posted? It's not posted anywhere on Turtle Road. You know that?
That's what makes it 55.
That's what makes it.
It's not posted.
But on the other side,
Not in the city.
on the other side of 24, it's 25,
Yeah, if they go, it's.
and they go 60 and 70.
Yeah.
Because they miss the lights downtown and come across Baldwin and then turn on Turtle to get back to 24. so they miss all the congestion, towards town.
It's-
And
The roads
you
are
never see
busy
the police out there.
with the students from school. We got trash all in the yard as it is right now.
Which is your home, is that the one right there?
382, right at the red line, if you just go
Okay.
to the right of it, the driveway there.
On the opposite side.
Yes,
Yeah, across the street.
so it's very close to us.
Thank you. Anybody else before we come back to you? Okay.
Okay, it's Mr. Reynolds again. Also, you're gonna have congestion there where, 69 ramp off ramp. Because you got trucks coming from south, going north, huge trucks. And then you got the light, so that's gonna back up eventually to the exit ramp. And people are gonna have trouble getting off that exit ramp. Plus, they have trouble getting off of it now because of the traffic. They sit there and sit there. Huge trucks usually have to wait quite a while to get off that exit ramp to turn left. I'm not talking about turning right, turn left south. And that's directly across from our house, and I can sit there all day long and watch these trucks have to sit there. So if you approve this, you're gonna have more congestion right in that area. I guarantee it.
Thank you. All right, one more time.
Is there any, well, I guess it's not in this proposal, but any thought to an abatement wall for noise from those properties? They say they have 4 lots that are gonna, the fronts will be 24, but there's no access to 24 there. So why are they considered front lots then? When I moved there 30 years ago, my house, I had to get a variance because they told me that's my backyard. It used to be my front yard, but now it's my backyard. So if that's my backyard, then that's the rear of their stores. Their front of their stores should be on that access road, just like mine is, on Sharon Drive, no longer on 24. And there's no reason there can't be a noise abatement wall put up along there. I know that's not part of your, but that's part of our concerns.
It's good to hear what you think. Caitlin, can you respond to what she said? Do you mind? It's not out of order?
Yeah, not during public.
You mean with the fronts? What is that? Description of the
I have a couple of questions for Caitlin after the hearing's closed.
Okay.
Okay, seeing no more requests for public, we'll close public hearing on this particular land, lot split request. Paul?
I just wondered what your response was to the front yard
So the
setback.
Lapeer Township may define yards differently than the city of
That's
Lapeer.
what
And
that
so ours is based on public frontage, you can have 2 front yards. I don't recall off the top of my head what Lapeer Township's requirements are.
Yeah.
But that would be our requirement. Now, many of the different concerns regarding traffic, talking about scaping of the street or different buffers and things of that nature, that's typically handled by the planning commission during site plan review. And so that may or may not be on the February planning commission's agenda, where they actually address a lot of those logistics. As part of tonight's application with Blaine's, with some of their variances requested, it does include some of those details as far as like landscaping, but theirs is the back portion of this development. It would not, at this point in the venture, we do not have anything submitted for anything that's in yellow. So they would not be required to do anything on that frontage until a development were to come forward, which we do have frontage greenbelt requirements, so 1 tree, 6 shrubs per 20 linear feet. So there is some type of beautification that's going to happen there. They are not proposing to have a driveway there, but otherwise, that's their requirements. Yes, sir.
So two questions. One, if in the future, at some point in time, development says, hey, I want a driveway on M24, MDOT is now going to be involved in that decision making, correct?
It will be involved.
And we know how lovely MDOT can be. Yes.
Because they have setbacks, specifically from the Turl, but also 69, and they're quite extensive due to the current speed limit there.
Right.
And so it would be relatively challenging. But again, tonight with the variance that's in front of us right
Right.
now is specifically to allow them to create that bottom parcel in that irregular shape. They are not proposing, at this point, there's no lot splits associated with the assessing department to say, we're
Right.
dividing it up this many parcels. This is a conceptual idea. They're just looking for approval of that southern parcel.
To that point though, that driveway behind those yellow parcels
Yes,
is a guarantee if we allow this split. They have to have access to the back of that parcel into that retention pond. So I'm assuming that if we approve this tonight, that driveway or a driveway close to that location will happen off of Turtle Road.
you could have that be a condition of your approval. That is
How
how it's
else?
currently drafted, but you
Because they're saying that they have access to the retention pond through that driveway, so I'm assuming that's a promise of that driveway, that I can depend on that.
right, and it's a difference between reading the black and white of an ordinance versus the practicality of an ordinance. So they have frontage, but how are you gonna access because of the MDOT discussion?
So, as far as the splits, right now, there's two parcels there, correct?
Let me double
Go-
check. So
yeah.
there's three, there's
Well,
the corner,
we're
this
ignoring
one,
the
and
corner.
this one. Right.
Right.
Corner's not part
We're
of
ignoring
this.
the corner with
Yep.
the house.
Yep.
So there's two parcels.
That's right.
So what they want to do is they want to split the front parcel and combine the back two parcels? Or are we creating three parcels?
So as part of this proposal, you would be merging, the whole development would be three parcels combined. As part of this project, regarding Blaine's, they would only need to do three splits or modifications. So you have the yellow, that could all be one parcel as the remainder. That's a hypothetical. As opposed to, this is gonna potentially be, it is likely to be its own parcel because of a pending project. And then the bottom one, which is our variance tonight.
So, talking about the bottom parcel, not asking why they didn't do this, but had they squared that off, that front piece just been like the rest of the frontals, and that been part of the Blaine development, would that have required any type of a variance? That would have passed?
Correct.
Um,
I would defer to the applicant to explain.
okay, well, I'm not done with all my questions yet.
Sure.
The white parcel, is there any concern with that being a buildable parcel no, the small one in the blue?
So this part is easily something that could accommodate some type of building, it's buildable, it's the irregularity of this narrowness and then it opening back up. So part of it is the city of Lapeer doesn't allow flag lots. So if you think of it as like a 60-foot driveway that goes and then sometimes the property opens up in the back, some townships do allow that. The city of Lapeer does not, and that's why the 4-to-1 ratio plays in, is we're not creating flag lots.
So that's, so that is a flag lot right now, based upon how it narrows like that in the middle? That's considered a flag lot?
Well, because of the frontage that's there, and then it opens up in the back how long it is. It doesn't need that.
Mr. Chairman, I would like to ask the developer what the benefit is of having the retention pond as part of one of the frontal pieces versus the Blaine parcel, if that's okay with you.
Sure. The retention pond is going to be used by all potential users on this site, which we would control and we maintain it. And so that's why we didn't want to include it on the Blaine's parcel. Because we would construct it, maintain it.
Then that implies to me that that white parcel in the front will remain in whoever's responsible for maintaining the retention pond will own that indefinitely with or without intent to build and rent. Is that a fair statement?
On the frontage on 24, as she said, that's a buildable lot, so a user could build a building there.
Right, but you can't sell that piece because you'd be selling your retention.
Correct.
Well, no, it's not, that's not quite it. So it is part of the development as a whole. So there are other cross-access agreements for private infrastructure for detention that they would have to explore and implement. So another site that this happened in the city of Lapeer, is over, Kim, do you remember the name of the complex? Woodbridge Development. So Woodbridge Development, it's a residential development. There was 6 phases at one point in time. One phase is those attached condos, those are already constructed. Then more recently, Ivy Terrace, an assisted living facility came in. They're right next to that detention pond. That big detention pond is private, connected to 3 different parcels, and they do the drainage. So there is cross agreements associated with access and detention.
Right, but I think you missed the point of where I was going on it. Right now, the retention pond is one parcel with that frontage.
But I'm not saying the responsibility would lie just with that parcel.
Okay,
It would
that's fine, but
it
what
would be tied with everybody else.
I didn't get all the way through it.
Okay.
I don't want them coming in here later and wanting to divide off the retention pond as its separate property.
I see,
It's always gonna, as far as I'm concerned, it's always gonna be connected to that frontage.
correct. They would need to come back for a variance to create a parcel that doesn't have public frontage.
And that's, I'm just saying that I would never intend on allowing that to be a separate piece of property back there, landlocked, if you will.
Yes.
You know, I understand the flag idea and all that, but obviously this is with the ramp and all that. But that was my point, was, you know, it
It
just,
came up in our, our pre-application meeting.
okay. All right, so we have a developer and tenants, or I'm trying to understand the situation here. Blaine's going to own their parcel,
Correct.
and then you're developing the whole section.
Yes.
Okay.
Correct.
That's all I had, Mr. Chairman.
Just to be clear a little bit on this, I mean, in the total scope of this project, could be in phases, I suspect, but that top lot that's closest to the corner,
Yes.
is that part of this? So I mean,
Yes,
potentially we
it's
have
part
5
of
outlaws there.
our overall development. It's a residential lot right now, but we have control of that.
So potentially 5 outlaws.
No, because I think the top one is, you wouldn't have like a small piece in that one residential lot, because the setbacks, it's really, there's not much to build on.
I'll make a motion if everybody's ready for a motion.
We're gonna close the public, we close that.
I did.
You guys are interacting so
We did,
much.
we did close.
Okay, I'll make a motion to approve the request of Lapeer Crossing LLC for a variance to allow for the creation of a lot that does not meet the 4:1 depth to width ratio located at parcel list ID L20-98-017-026-00 and L20-98-017-026-10 from section 7.06.3 because it does meet all standards in section 7-22.04E.
Support.
Okay, we have a motion of support. Any other discussion?
One discussion point. This was a very pointed variance request, specific to that one lot with the retention pond. I want to make that perfectly clear that that's all this particular variance addresses.
Right, and I was gonna say the same thing. I'd like all the people in the room to understand that a lot of what we discuss is a very specific item regarding something very specific. And although we hear your concerns and generalized notions that have to do with what the planning committee, commission, and city commission might decide, they're really not their bailiwick. We can only decide small elements of what applies to the very narrow scope of what we could do. I'd just like to point that out. Thought you all made great points. We can only discuss this one specific thing. ultimately, that's what it comes down to for us. Is what-
Right. I mean, you certainly want to address the planning commission, because over a set time to do particular questions, and concerns. All right, so roll call. Yes.
Paul,
Aye.
Lynn?
Aye.
Jeff?
Aye.
Catherine?
Aye.
Eric?
Yes.
Dan?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay.
Can I request a 30-second break so I can refill my water glass?
Absolutely.
Yeah, you got a lot of talking
Good
to do
night.
next.
There you go.
I would just like, one thing, typically, when we're speaking in the public meeting, it's okay for us to interact. I mentioned something to Galen, a lot of the time we wait till it's the closed part, but we can interact with people in the audience. That's what the public meeting's okay. We can ask them questions. Yeah, it's not like the planning commission.
Or city
Or the
commission.
city commission, we can't interact.
Okay, why is that? I mean, I'm not arguing.
Well,
Why
no,
is that?
I guess because we've always done it.
Oh.
But typically what we've done is let them, usually, the next thing we do, after Caitlin will give her presentation, and then we will have, right then, typically used to be, are there any questions, Caitlin? Then we would usually have 10 minutes.
Before public.
Yes, then it was just yeah, and then we would go back to that. It didn't matter, but that's why I jumped in with it, because typically we'll get those things clarified so they can hear her clarification before they get a chance to make their. That's all. So that's why I was.
All right, I apologize.
I was just trying to jump it in there. You were right on the format part of it. I was just trying to.
Yeah.
Okay, well, we can
Doesn't
be
matter.
There's never gonna be drivers.
Doesn't matter anyway.
For that property.
I wanted that to understand.
MDOT's not gonna allow that.
Okay. Next item of business is this is another public hearing. Request from Blaine Farm and Fleet, consider building design and signage variances located at vacant property in the southeast corner of Pearl and N24.
Alright, so similar property, we just discussed, so again, utilizing the same, specific components. This is the proposed store location, so located on the east side of the conglomerates of those parcel recombinations. And so this is the proposed location. They would utilize, again, that common access, hypothetically for the entire complex, and then have a separate roadway off of Pearl. Next is talking about all the variances that are requested as part of this application. So we have two different sign variances we will talk over first regarding two of the different forms of signage they're requesting. Then we have the building material and design regarding the improved building material as well as screening based on the roof design. And then we have the building exterior regarding the amount of required glass on the Turl side, because that's their official frontage, because the parcel line doesn't go all the way to 24. And then you also have their overhead doors associated with their auto repair location, also facing that Turl Road side. So taking it in chunks, it's up to you, Mr. Chairman, if you want me to present each type, or I can run through all of it and we can do public comment on all of it, and then go back through deliberation through each of those individual three, but it's a lot of variance requests and I don't want to get too confused.
Right.
Oh, go ahead.
I would favor all at once presentation.
Even the signs, you don't wanna just get the signs out of the way, hopefully as quick as possible, and then deal with the appearance, the building stuff.
I think
I
it'd
don't
make it
care.
more clear to just do the signs and then do the other part after.
That was my feeling, just, yeah.
Okay, we'll deal with the two sign requests
Okay.
right now.
Alright, so we'll do that. So specifically, they're looking for 4-foot sign variances, specifically for the monument sign as well as the business center sign that would be proposed with this development. So the property is zoned B2 general business. You have some residential located in that general area with other B2 properties as well. Essentially, you have 3 different signs that are standalone that are being proposed: a monument, a business center sign, as well as a interstate sign. So the number is not the concern; it is literally the height of 2 of them. Otherwise, it meets our requirement. They do propose other wall signage and things of that nature. That's not being discussed for our variance tonight as well. So the monument sign would be located at the intersection of Turl Road and 24 for that business center sign.
Can you go back to the drawing just for a moment? The
Oh,
first-
I have a better one.
Okay.
So
Okay,
this is.
go
So
ahead.
this is the overall development. So you have the business sign over here, the ground sign, and then the I-69 sign. So we'll get, so the applicant is requesting the monument as well as the dinner center sign to have a 4-foot variance for each of those, due to the topography, and making accommodations for the stone that they're proposing specifically on that sign, those signs. So this is the proposed signs that are in compliance, so we have the wall signage and then the multi-tenant interstate sign. So those are fine. I just want to super clarify, these aren't the ones up for discussion as much as the ground sign that is proposed. So this is what the proposed mock-up is regarding that location. And that they are proposing that higher specific stone masonry for the base.
You have a location, or,
I'll go to that,
Okay.
yes. And this is for that multi-tenant sign, including multiple different tenants. So it would include other spaces that are being discussed. But for the overall height, they still need that 4-foot, primarily again, due to accommodation of their decorative base that they're requesting, they bump into that maximum height requirement.
And this is that was the 24 Turl intersection
That's
sign.
So if we are sitting on the north side of Turl facing south, we're talking about that sign to the right in white. You have the interstate here with the interstate sign there. And then you have the same sign except closer to 24 looking east. So that's primarily where it's proposed, be located between the two driveways.
that's the auto center sign, the single.
That
That's
is
not
the
the
single,
multi-
that's a single
Yeah.
tenant. That's correct. This is clarifying that location in context. As opposed to the multi-tenant sign, which is right at the intersection, which is where that's being proposed. It would still meet all of the setback requirements to ensure we meet those different spacing requirements from the right of way and things of that nature. But again, it goes back to that height. So this is taking from Google Maps, the existing kind of components. So the top one is the blue one, literally standing essentially where the intersection is, looking towards the property. So the sign, clearly the trees and shrubbery would likely be removed, and it would be somewhere in that general vicinity. And then as you move farther down where that yellow dot is, that is farther down the road. Essentially where you're looking where that power line is, a little bit beyond that, that's where you would have that other monument sign.
So your little red, your clicker there, can you put the red dot where you think that's gonna go?
Oh, somewhere over here.
Are you talking about the
I
multi-tenant
was actually
sign?
looking at the top of multi.
She's talking about the multi-tenant.
Yeah, like, why is it, where's
Right on
that?
that
Why is it
shrub.
red
Yeah.
dot on the
That's
wrong
what-
Yeah, I
side?
can't
But-
go past the hill.
But
No.
Caitlin, are the setbacks any different on the state highway than our normal setbacks? I mean, I'm sure the state
So the
highway
right
has.
of way line adjusts.
Okay, so it's based on the right of way and state highway has their own.
That's right. So it is, our front yard starts at the right of way. Some communities, most townships start at the center of the roadway. In the city, it is not common to do that because we have parcel lines that are separate from the start actually at the right of way. Yes, sir.
Everything about both of these signs are compliant with the exception of the base.
That's my understanding.
That's why they're here,
That's right.
because of the base, the
Yep.
brick base. Okay, I just want to keep things simple. Thank you.
So as part of sign
I'm sure you
regulation,
will.
there is a 2-step approval process. So the first step is that you have to meet 1 through 4. So you have to meet at least one of these, not all of these, one of these. And I'll go into those. And then the next set of standards is all 5. So for the first standard, again, we're trying to find one that is reasonable to utilize. It's talking about this sign variance is reasonable due to practical difficulty, due to topography, the road curvature, desired trees, limited visibility, things of that nature, in which a conforming sign would not be adequate. And so in support, there is a variety of different height factors associated with the facade, specifically in the elevation for that roadway, that increasing the height would increase the specific visibility. However, due to where the monument sign would be along that roadway, it's not, you can make the stance too that the Turl Road corridor, there isn't a big topography change where you wouldn't be able to navigate to where you need to go or see something. 24, there is a more dramatic 20 from the top of 24 down to the bottom where the expressway is. There is a more dramatic elevation gain. Two, this sign variance is relevant or potentially can go to the next step because of the large size of frontage, specifically compared to others in the zoning district. So this property with the combination that's proposed would have 3 different frontages in some ways, where you have the Turl Road 24 being the official frontages, but then you also have signage that's desired along 69 and is allowed on 69, in which that significant amount of frontage could be related to that size. The applicant in opposition, they are proposing to make these signs more visible in comparison to their neighbors. There aren't specifically a lot of commercial development competition right now in that specific area regarding that visibility. And so those are the 2 standards that seem to make the most sense out of that whole list of 4. So we can talk more later, but your motion would be 2-tiered. It would be standard 1 or 2 of that set of standards, and then we go to this next set of standards. So the next set of standards is talking about the regulation is due to a practical difficulty or unique condition. So again, the applicant is primarily looking at those 4 additional feet to accommodate those masonry base associated with the signage. So there is a topography change, specifically sloping downward towards the property, in which increased height increases your visibility, specifically for that multi-business center sign. And their intent is to be more aesthetically pleasing with that sign. In opposition, there could be considered that you don't have otherwise unique conditions associated with 4 feet taller than what are already 8 feet and 16 feet fences. Number 2 talks about that there is practical difficulties or unique conditions associated with the variance request that's not found throughout the city. So you do have a large elevation change located along more 24, a little bit of Turl Road, in which you're looking at that ingress, egress, and people being able to wayfind to the property. And in opposition, that the proposed difficulties, there isn't as much of a topographical change that would merit the 4-foot variance that's being requested. 3 is talking about that the proposed variances would have public benefits, and that would not injure other properties of similar zoning classification or allowable rights, and where that we're not contradicting the public purpose of sign regulation. And so in support, they are proposing to do a multi-tenant sign in one location and a monument in another. So they are somewhat consolidating potentially what those are. Because they're consolidating the multi-tenant, we automatically allow them to have a little bit more height. And so part of that is meeting that stipulation regarding that a large amount of frontage and consolidating what signage would be there. In opposition, the intent is to have those specific sizes so it is not overly contributing to sign clutter or a dramatic change in character from the surrounding area. 4th standard is talking about the applicant would enjoy the same rights as others in the same zoning district, and we're maintaining freedom of speech and the intent of sign regulation. So making sure that there's proper wayfinding is important associated with the goods and services. Due to the property having the different right-of-ways associated with that, the different detached signs and quantity aren't of a major concern. There could be a consideration of a lesser variance if we do want to allow more of a base structurally. The ZBA could consider, instead of a 4-foot variance, you could consider 3, 2, or 1 as part of your decision tonight. And then lastly, would it adversely affect the public safety or welfare? So in general, it doesn't appear the extra 4 feet would directly jeopardize public safety or welfare. And with that, that is the sign component of tonight's request. The applicant is here if we have questions.
Can you show that slide again with the three proposed monument signs?
So this is the multi-tenant, the one at the 24.
I meant the, like,
Yeah.
the map.
1, 2, 3.
Uh,
So the one down there coming off the exit ramp, is that gonna be,
This one?
that's gonna be a multi, that's.
That's
also-
interstate, that's not part of tonight's request. They meet the requirements.
The big one doesn't go.
The big one doesn't count. Thank you for your listen.
So we're just dealing with 24 Turtle Road and Turtle Road itself. Those two signs.
I suppose it's more a function of planning, but will there be signage on the south side of the building?
So they have the right regarding wall signage. So they are limited to 20% of the front facing, which for them, it would be the turtle side. And so the percentage wise of that 20% can be shared on any face of the building. And so they can choose, this is later on in the presentation, or no. They have their proposed main entry sign. They have their tire indication over here for their service center. And so that's part of that 20% rule that's on Pearl Road. So I don't know if that helps you answer your question. They have the right to, and they can always make changes from tonight's meeting as long as they meet all of the other zoning requirements administratively through the building department with their sign permits.
Yes. All right, well, open public hearing on this. Anybody care to address the request by the applicant?
You people are free to comment on the sign issue if you want, neighbors. Because you commented before, doesn't mean you can't comment on this.
Can I ask a question? I mean, obviously, we're in a public hearing. So we're just- So I'd like to ask the developer why they think they need 4 feet. I understand it's the ambiance of the actual stone-looking structure, but why not 1 foot? Why not 2 feet? Why do you need 4 feet?
Good evening, everybody. Dave Wynn, Senior Design Manager for Blaine's Farm and Fleet. This is been our standard, our prototype signage package that we've been doing, and the base, with the stone base, it matches, we think it makes it a better looking sign, but it also matches, we have a stone base on the front elevation of the building, and it follows along with that theme too, and it allows us to keep it up off the ground, which is more durable instead of dropping that signage down closer to the ground. It's what we typically do, and it helps us maintain our center without losing any more sign square footage with that height requirement.
If we don't give you the variance, what are you gonna do? Drop the block?
We would have to, because we would still like that, we want the visibility of our sign. The sign is designed kind of integral with our, it ties into our elevations and our building design and our identity. So on that, like say, if we're gonna have, we would drop it down, but we don't want to get it too low, lose visibility. We would still have something on the base to protect it. But this is
How tall are your blocks?
those blocks are, they're 12-inch blocks. It's a stone base, actually. It's like it's 12 by probably 16 inches. Yeah.
That's what I thought. So you would just be taking that, lowering the lower part of it, and then the top, bringing it down.
Yeah, it would.
The top would be the same as we look at.
Yeah, if we had to do that, that would be the first thing. Again, we always, 20 foot is been a good height for us. And this height just from visibility, because that's the interstate, not the interstate business sign, but the unified business sign on the corner. That's gonna house the tenants for the outlots of the development, plus us at the top. So we don't want to lose too much square footage on that, depending on how that gets subdivided up. I think we have 4 shown here, but if there turns into 5, one will have to be split in half, and the more we shrink that, when we lower that sign, It just lessens the visibility of those panels, because they're gonna obviously be smaller than what we have.
So on that one, we dropped you down 3 blocks or 2 blocks, everything else would be the same. In other words, are you saying that you would change the square footage of the rectangular areas of the sign?
We wouldn't change any of that.
Yeah, sorry.
We wouldn't change any of that stuff. If it did lower, we would still want we still want a base. We still want a base because again, it keeps, from mowers and anything, it just keeps it off of the metal panels for the sign.
Most corporate entities that we deal with they have a pre-formatted thing, and then they go for a particular square footage and go up and down. But the signs themselves typically, like you're saying, stay the same.
Yeah.
Just a matter of going like this with them.
Yeah, I mean, it's signage. I mean, it's just reality. You want it as visible as possible within the restrictions that each community that we go into. That was the difference. Really, it's not the signage isn't any bigger. It's taller because of that base. So that's why we were going for the 4 foot just to accommodate that base.
Mr. Chair.
Oh, I was signaling earlier. One thing, Dale Curbison, 576 Liberty. One of the things that was in consideration at the time when we were talking about signs for this property is they're next to a multi-lane highway, so the snow load being deposited in front of those signs is going to be significant more than you find on a city street. So the additional height would keep it out of the snow and visible in the winter.
It's been mentioned several times in your application. I mean, I'm assuming there's been considerable earth moving to level that property.
Yes.
I mean, do you foresee feet coming off the current elevation and moving that elsewhere on the property, or is it more or less what we call the hill that's kind of remain there, or are you going to take that down?
I mean,
As far as the need for a taller sign.
as far as where our building pad is sitting on that property, I think, Justin, can you let me know how high are we actually building that up to make this site times out?
From building pad, we can people.
Okay, but from where it is now, we're putting in like 50 feet of fill, so. Yeah, because that, I'm sure you're familiar with that site, but it slopes from that intersection all the way down and all the way down the creek down there, so to get the site to even work out, it has to be built up quite a bit. It's one of the 2 entrances that we have when we get into more of the building design of it. To make those work out the way they were, it was a fine balance of bringing that up, so the whole building's coming up. The interstate corridor, or not the interstate corridor, so the unified business sign will be the one in the corner, which will be at the high point as far as how that elevation that's going to be spotted off of the developers, grading plans on that. But the road sign, or the ground sign we call it, that's between our 2 entrances. That calls the attention, the unified business sign calls the attention that there's development there and they see our building, but that sign kind of says these entrances are how you get into our store.
Okay. I saw 2 hands up here.
You want to go first? Stephanie Lashford. Can you go back to the outside of the this one's going to be on the corner of M24 and Durham? Is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay. I understand your comment about the snow and whatnot, but I'm just thinking about the Meyer sign that we have on M24, just the overall look of the town, and this is 20 feet tall on the corner there, so I would just, when I go to work in the morning, the traffic doesn't always stop at the red light there, and they come through, and I can't see them sometimes, so I have a little bit of concern about a 20-foot sign being there when I'm coming up to make a turn to go south. And just the overall appearance of it with the rest of the town, how it fits in with the city of Lapeer. There's no 20-foot signs. It's a very bright look to it.
Thank you.
Barbara Walker, 948 Carroll Road. I'm going to address all of you now. I just want to know, if you approve this variance, does that mean you're giving implicit agreement for the planning commission to go ahead and approve this? I guess I don't understand how this is all fitting together. why would they need a sign variance before they get approval to do all this? It seems like it's kind of backwards. I'm a nurse, not a, obviously, so I hate to sound ignorant, but I don't get why we're talking about sign variances and everything when they haven't gotten approval to do this yet. We're like putting a horse in front of the, cart in front of the horse.
Wasn't that a conscious decision, actually?
Yes.
I don't
So I
know
can
who
address
wants
it
to-
now, Mr. Chairman, or I can address it later.
Yeah, go ahead, please.
As part of the review process, it's always been our standard practice that if there are any items that you need a variance or exception from our current standard rules, is that typically you identify those prior to coming to the planning commission. If they are make it or break it for the project, then you should go to those first, because if they get an exception from the rule from the zoning board of appeals, the planning commission doesn't have any input on that variance. It's been decided. And so it makes it an easier understanding from a site development standpoint, which includes a lot more than just their narrow scope. It includes all the landscaping, it includes the utility
Right.
work. And so knowing that they got this level of variance can impact decisions or site plan changes. So that's why it's very common, you say if these are make it or break it changes, you have those go to the ZBA first
I see.
and then go to the planning
So
commission.
with that in mind, if they vote no tonight to this variance, then that means that they have to the sign variances or whatever, like, then does that
That just means they
indicate-
can't have a sign that's 4 feet over our requirement.
Okay, but they can still have.
They can
some-
still have those signs
It
in
just
those
has to be
locations.
lower. Okay, I'm
That's
just,
right.
this is kind of confusing, but I got it. Okay, thank you.
I was gonna say to somebody, there are signs that are 20 feet in the city here and there. A lot of them are grandfathered in, and there's been a number of them over the years that we've moved down when they were replaced. There's not a lot of them.
It's
There are
such a
some.
thick sign as opposed to on a stick.
Yeah, oh yeah, I was just trying to tell you, so you.
Yeah, no, I know there's taller ones, but
It's
this
a matter of
is just,
education.
this is like a
Yeah.
big, huge strip mall entrance, I mean.
Yeah.
Somewhat.
And also there's setbacks when they put a sign on a corner, just so you understand
Yeah.
that, because the visuals do have to be there no matter when you're sitting in the car or truck. Once you get past the 10-foot area, anything past that, you're already blocked down here. So that's why the signs are placed somewhere so you can see. I don't think you'll have any visual problems. You might not like the height, which is what you're saying, right? Did I understand what you said?
Yeah, I
Okay.
just, in general appearance.
Yeah, I wanna make
if
sure I
can
got
give
what
my
you're
own
saying,
opinion, yeah.
The lighting to this sign at Turl and 24, I'm assuming is gonna be lit.
Yes.
So
Internal.
4 foot higher means the lighting's gonna go out further. Down lower, I'm not gonna see that lighting as much in my house as I am when it's 4 foot higher.
Anybody else want to address this issue before we close the hearing, public hearing? Okay, public hearing is closed, we'll talk up here.
My overall position is the multi-tenant sign, due to the position of it, in fact, it is going to be off the road right away further than a typical city sign would be because it's on a state highway. The hill, the topography, it fits right into the decision for granting the 4-foot variance on that particular location. In my opinion, if it's either 1 or 2, I'd go with 2 probably, personally, but, no, I'm sorry, not that one, the multi-tenant, I'd go with 1. The other sign, I don't see why we need a 4-foot. I respect a consistent look. We have to consider that, but I think 2 foot, 2 rows of block on this particular view, understanding it's not exactly what it looks like. I think would make that sign look very consistent with the building, consistent with the other sign. It doesn't need to have the 4 foot in that other location. The fact that there's nothing stopping them from putting either of these signs on a cement pad on the ground, which would look ridiculous in both cases, personally. They fit our variance requirements quite well with the topography, and the size of the development. I'm for 2 foot on the monument sign and 4 foot on the multi-tenant sign.
I have a question for Dale again. Dale, when you brought up the snow, you said that was on the 69, on the 24, or on the Turtle, or all three?
What my comment in particular is the width of 24 puts multi-lanes of snow over in front of that base of that sign.
Okay. Thank you. So it was that 24 Turtle corner width, thank you.
How, I don't really, how far would the sign be set back off Troy?
So the location isn't been specifically nailed down. They have to meet our requirements, specifically from the intersection. You have to be 25 feet from the right of way to the right of way, make a triangle, and that's how close you would be. So they wouldn't be required to meet our location criteria for that.
And I'm sorry, I was actually speaking of the other one that had the auto service, the smaller monument.
Oh, smaller one.
On Troy.
The turtle.
The
That
Turtle
one
one,
there,
right there.
lower at the corner.
So from driveways, we require 10 feet. So you'd make a triangle from 10 feet to 10 feet from the right of way to the driveway, and you have a 10-foot triangle you have to stay outside of.
Be on the other side of the ditch.
Right.
Is that, your point of question, is Troll a city maintained road there or county road commission?
County road.
So
It's a
it's their
Class
setback.
A.
Class, right, but it's a county road commission. I mean,
It's not a Class A?
I don't believe it is. It has restrictions.
Really?
I thought it was when they did that as a detour, they put it. They did not know.
They may have, I'm not sure. It's a county maintained road.
So I can see the
With no
points there.
speed lights, and it's, doesn't have speed limit sign in the whole
I
road.
just want to speak to what Dan just said. So I actually don't think, I'm familiar with the corner. I don't think the topography really impacts whether or not you need an additional 4 feet on the corner of 24 and 69. And I certainly don't think you need 4 feet at the entrance where you're going into the building. But I do think if the base is important, I would be willing to give a 1 foot variance if there's a base at the bottom. But I wouldn't think that you would need more than 1 foot on either side. That's my position.
Well, I'm a 2 and 2 man, or a 1 and 2 man. I don't see much point at all in the monument variance. We spent, how many years I've been on this board, lowering stuff, trying to get monument signs in. The rationale behind a lot of monument signs is that there's other signs on the property, particularly with new developments. I don't think anybody coming up Turtle Road from the east is gonna have any problem seeing. They might have a little problem seeing it monument sign at first, but it'll become very apparent. That's why I was talking about the speed limit. And the big sign, I think it's too tall at 20. So
And I think
it's
going
tough.
forward, I mean, I'm sure those outlot buildings, I'm sure this is the planning commission, because we probably have signage facing 24. So it's not like, kind of kept.
I hope not.
So the purpose of a multi-tenant sign is the intention that we're giving an incentive. We are saying you're gonna group signs together, in which then you are having a little bit larger of a sign, in which we're encouraging it to be 1 sign, not 5 signs. And so that's the intent.
So could that be the planning commission deny a building sign, a fixed sign?
No, typically that's reviewed by the building department signage. Typically it's deferred separate from site plan review, because it's handled administratively.
Just a quick question on the facade, the design of the facade.
Yes.
And you see this lower brick level that kind of matches, I'm just gonna assume it's a match to that
Yes.
brick. How many feet high is that on the facade of the building? Is that a 2 foot? It's not showing me how many bricks when I go through, or I don't see something that tight. Right here, so the gentleman here was talking about how this kind of mirrors some of the design for the outer facade of the building, and it is there, okay? But my question is, I don't think that's 4 feet. I'm just asking, how many feet of that is there across the front?
Yeah,
of the
to answer
building?
your question, I think it might be 3 feet.
Okay.
I'm 100% sure, our new building prototype, which is what this is, I believe we're at 3 feet, and then we typically have like a stone cap on that too, which is another
Okay, I had
So-
seen it there and you had mentioned it, and
Yeah.
I understood that continuity from the design
Yeah,
group.
yeah, that's where the design came from, but it also, the protection of the base, and then to the point of, we get it down too low, and you do, say you get 3 to 4 feet of snow there, 3 feet of snow, and you're cutting off the bottom of the sign, too, so.
Taylor, can you pull up the street view of that intersection, please, like you had before? Yep, oh, right there. So, I mean, the multi-tenant sign is gonna go about where those shrubs are on the top picture. And that's a little bit of a knoll up from the street level, some feet already. So, I mean, unless, we're kind of already having some tough, assume the elevation doesn't change in the ground, we already have a lift in elevation for where the sign is going, so, there's adding to the ammunition of those to say, hey, we not 4, but maybe another number, is kind of what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, the only reason I said 2 is because it gives them a little block on the bottom to fight off
Protect
the
the
snow
protect the
plow.
investment, yes.
If that was the whole intent coming in, I would go along with that. I don't even know if you need anything on the monument. But again, it does give it some protection.
Yeah.
I don't have any problem from a protection, from the signage thing. It's a lot of sign up there.
Yeah.
All the corporations have a typical, because they have to pay for all these things and we can't consider their investment, but all of them have a typical format that they use.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sure Farmer Fleet has appeared before many, many, many ZBAs all over the place, seeking some sort of relief based on different circumstances. So it's nothing unusual for them. And it's a matter of how high to me. That's what I'm trying to say. So I don't know, 2 is okay with me. If we did nothing, I still think they would see, if we denied variance, I still think the big sign they would see just fine.
But you'd have one of the tenants' signs would be sitting on the ground.
Pretty close to it.
Right, so you gotta get them up a
That's
little
not even
bit.
practical.
So I said, you gotta get them up a little bit though.
But it is a choice.
It's their choice by their height, that's what I was trying to get at. They have a formatted design thing that they stick with, and then it costs them so much money for that investment per each company they deal with. We've many times had the company in here, and then they said, it's gonna cost us another $12,000 to do that, which we can't consider. So that's not up to us to decide if they want, how they want to design their sign, that's their business. But we have to a certain degree, protect the residents in the neighborhood.
Yes.
Number one, and then number two, abide by the ordinance, unless there's a good reason to not do that. I'm having trouble even finding something to give them 2 feet. I don't think it was, you got a week, maybe 1 week interpretation of number 4 possibly. I need to struggle with just giving them 2 feet based on the conditions that we have to abide by. But I think you could argue with the number 4 and give them 2 feet, 2 and 2. You guys think that's my long speech.
Was this gentleman going to say something?
Yeah.
He's not allowed to say something? I don't.
Yeah, so just,
As
so
a
just,
chairperson, you can acknowledge.
Okay, I'll-
that.
Go ahead, answer that.
okay, so just from just on the grade elevation, that actually, from there, it slopes down about 3 feet pretty quickly right off where the sign would be. And then where the ground sign is, it slopes up even more because you got the road height and then it starts sloping pretty quick and the sign's set back. So we're not at the road level or above the road level. It's actually gonna be lower for the base of the sign, so.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're looking at it here, it's like, it's not gonna go right in the corner, raised up a couple of feet off of that. It's gonna be set back where it starts, because everything has to kind of drop and then build back up.
That's true. Typically, you're right, particularly on coming off down Turtle Road.
Yeah.
You can see it goes up. I drove up there. I drive through there all the time. I looked at all over.
But then he's saying as it gets away from the curb, it slopes down.
It does.
Yeah, it goes and
So
it slopes, fairly quickly. So if the sign's set back here, all of a sudden that sign is now down,
Yeah.
well, 3 or 4 feet.
Well, the sign can only be in one spot. So
Yeah,
it's just a matter, you're either looking up at it more, or you're a little higher to it.
Yeah.
Right?
So that's,
The reason I asked about the elevation, because, I know there have been accidents that were, because of that incline, and even though there's a left turnoff lane to go on Turtle, people find themselves itching out to see over that hill. So that's why I'm hoping you're gonna take this down considerably and not just start with whatever you have out there.
Yeah, no, it's again, as far as what the final grading plan, I'll be in just.
So, my name is Justin Longstreth with Moore Roofing Engineers. We put the site plan together for this development. The berm or the little mound that you see in that top picture is actually in the road right of way. And so we would need permission from either MDOT or the road commission to cut that down. Our grading technically would only be allowed to start beyond that berm.
Behind it.
Behind it, correct, because what you see there is in road right of way. So we can do what we can, but without the specific permissions from those agencies, it would be difficult to get into the road right of way.
So are you saying that the sign would sit I mean, clearly the trees have been trimmed up, but you're saying the sign would sit behind those?
Correct.
And so they added 4 feet is what you're saying is gives it the lift over the trees?
Specifically the lift over the berm there.
Yeah.
Trees won't be there.
That we would cut the trees.
They don't own that piece. He just mentioned that
Well,
he
no,
can't cut those.
They do.
They can cut the trees, they
They
can't
do.
regrade.
They can't
can't
regrade,
regrade.
okay.
Okay, thank you. Did you have something, Dale?
Well, I was just gonna add that as just a point of information, that right of way is controlled by the U.S. Department of Transportation. Their easement for the ramp comes all the way to the trail.
So there'll never be a driveway there. Done. Answer.
Yeah.
We know, but no, we really don't.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to resolve the monument sign. I'd like to make the motion, I'd like to propose a 2-foot variance on the monument sign due to, again, the topology alone tells me that that's gonna be sitting down in a hole from the road when they're done with that. So I'd like to make a motion to approve the variance requested by Mike Forseth, representing Blaine's Farm and Fleet, for a variance of 2 feet for the sign height of the proposed monument sign located at southeast corner of Trail Road and M24 parcels as listed from table 7-15.03 because it does meet one of the standards 2 of section 7-22.04F and all of the standards in section 7-22.04G.
Support.
I support, and then I'll make the other motion.
We should do one motion on the
Oh,
floor
we
at a
did,
time.
okay, thought we were gonna be able to vote. Okay.
So.
Aye.
Monument, yes.
Were we doing a roll call or?
I didn't hear the motion. I mean, I didn't hear what they were supposed to be voting. Sorry.
So there's a first and then there's a second.
I have Eric as the second.
Right.
Aye, I would say.
Aye.
Okay, so you're roll call voting now, is that what you're saying?
On the first,
On this one?
Yes.
So we have,
Yeah.
we can discussion again. I guess is the question.
Oh, you want more discussion? Okay.
No,
Well,
we-
nobody has said, is there any discussion yet?
Okay,
So, go ahead, Jeff.
okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion on that motion? Oh, I thought you had something. No.
No,
Second.
no, I think that's, I was just trying to get us back to where we got lost. That's where we were.
aye,
Aye.
Jeff?
Aye.
Catherine?
This is on the monument side that's actually on Turtle, right?
Right,
Correct.
and it's a
No,
2-foot variance.
This guy. That guy.
we can vote.
Aye.
Aye.
Yes.
The only reason I was gonna do the other one was just separate them, but if you're ready to do that.
Yeah, go ahead.
Correct,
Yeah,
to approve the variance from Mike Forsyth representing Blaine Farm and Fleet for variance of 2 feet for the sign height of the proposed monument, or excuse me, yeah, that's correct,
Multiple tenant, isn't it?
yeah,
Now you're on the multiple tenant and you're saying 2 feet variance?
yes, multiple.
It's this one. We just did
Oh,
that.
here we go, sorry. Gosh, 2 feet for the height of the business center sign, multiple center sign located at the southeast corner of Turl and then 24. The parcel ID you can do, because it does meet at least one standard from section 72204F and all of the standards from section 72204G.
Support.
Clarification, which one of the one or twos for that second motion? Was it meeting standard one with topography or two frontage?
One.
Okay, thank
Do we have a we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion on the motion?
Just one point. When I finally got my camera out, I was able to blow up the numbers here. Those additional tenant sections are 2.5 foot tall. They can easily get there at 2 feet if they want to put 4 block in there. I'm not telling them they have to do that. I didn't want that part of the motion, but after I actually saw the numbers, I agree with the 2 foot variance. Then they can decide what they want to do within that space. I think it'll look nicer if it's a 4 foot.
They are, and they always.
That's aesthetics. That's not neat, or that's not.
They always, yeah, I agree.
And then shrink the section for each.
They
By
always
6
could, that's the whole
inches.
point.
I mean, that's their prerogative now that we're
They're
giving
just
them.
going with their standard height. It's
So, roll call.
unusual.
Okay. Paul,
Aye.
Lynn.
Aye.
Jeff.
Aye.
Catherine. Eric,
Yes.
Dan,
Yes.
motion carries.
So now,
Now we'll do the remaining 4 variances. So I still split them into 2 because conceptually you kind of look at one and the other, but I will do the entire presentation for all 4. So the first 2 that we're gonna slice off is regarding the proposed building material. And so specifically a precasted panel that's painted is not considered an improved building material from our standards. And so they're proposing that the precasted would be considered that for their development. They also were proposed to eliminate the screening for the on-roof components based on the building design specifically. So showing those different facades components, they do break this out a little bit differently, but I guess real quickly. So you have your painted wall panel, which is your tan. They do propose that, I guess, tan color at the bottom. That's your cultured stone that was talked about several times during the sign discussion. They have a variety of different windows, which we will talk about later, but primarily focused on the west as well as the north elevation where the windows would be. They're proposing the bulk of the precast wall is on primarily sides of the building that are not as publicly viewed. So specifically, when you're looking at the east side, that's the side that's towards the other B2 zone district in the city. And then you have the south side, which is the I-69 side. And then you have the Turtle side to the north, which is this side with a decent amount of other precast as well. The reddish material that is proposed to be ephes, that is also considered a non-improved material from our standards. So you are allowed to have non-improved material. However, the requirement is that you have to have majority of the building, which is 51%, an improved building material. So that is a numbers game as far as the number and quantity of each type of supply. So the applicant did improve some different conceptual pictures of other developments that they have for theirs. So you can see that they have the steel component associated with the entrance, and then the darker ephes, and then the precasted that they're proposing for their redesigned specific model for our location. So included in those, so I circled, so the improved building material is part of the glass. You're allowed to have accent metal material, that's not a concern. EFIS is that unimproved material, so really the stone is included as part of the improved building material, but the percentage game on the majority of the facade is really with that precast wall. That is the main component of this variance regarding the facade and that building material is the quantity of that. Yes, sir.
Mr. Chairman, she's saying a lot there, and I don't want to lose my thought when she moves on to the other issues. What is the precast material, and why doesn't it meet our standard? How is it different than stucco? I'm asking, and what in the world is ethos?
That was my question. I'm just having a little education here so that we're all on the same page.
I apologize for not being a landscape or an architecture on some of the different building materials. So specifically in our zoning ordinance regarding the facade of all buildings, specifically for commercial, in the city of Lapeer, our design materials specifically state some of these, and they're put in these two buckets: what's considered an improved building material and what's considered a lesser material. So the category specifically for those quality materials, we require 51%, is specifically quality materials that are characteristic of Michigan, such as earth tone brick, decorative tilt-up panels, wood, native stone, tinted/textured concrete masonry units, glass products, or other similar things as determined by the planning commission. As opposed to the clearly lesser material is the smooth face concrete blocks, the undecorative tilt-up concrete. EFIS stands for exterior insulation finishing system, so it's kind of like coupling in some stucco.
It's a synthetic stuff. It's typically 2 inch insulation over your sub base.
If it had a brick appearance, could it fall into our improved?
Correct.
Okay. And the steel on the front with blades is considered improved?
It is not.
Okay.
But you can use EFIS, it's just the quantity in which it is. So that's why I say
But what about the precast? How does that fall in?
so that's not considered because there isn't a decorative component to it.
So I'm sorry, how much of a percentage do they have on the face that is not quality?
Or what's, if you have to have 51%, what's compliant?
Here we go.
Where's
stone.
what
Here we
percentage
go.
I'm
is
almost there.
compliant?
I'm almost there.
Oh,
I'm
good.
almost there. I knew it was coming. So we have 11% of that glass, specifically, generally speaking. The stone base, that trimmer along the bottom is approximately around another 11%. The metal is 11%. The EFIS is that 32, and
But
then
that's not
83% is not compliant.
Wow.
Wait a minute, so the 32 and the 40, that's 72% non-compliant? Is that what you're saying?
correct.
But the metal is not compliant, so it's 83
33% of the
total.
building is.
Oh,
So
but-
that's where I'm saying, like, again, it's because they're allowed to have the mixture of materials, it's just the
Absolutely.
percentage game.
And the metal, and what Dan said is the metal is also non-compliant.
Correct, but you can have metal as accent, which is what they're proposing.
Okay, so we can,
So that the metal isn't as much of a concern. Same thing with, generally speaking, the EFIS, that darker material in there, that's generally accent that keeps them below that 50%, or that 49%. But the precast is the majority of the, primarily majority of the building, which causes them to be that non-compliant area.
So they're short by 18%.
No,
No, more than that, because so technically, from my perspective, I would add metal, EFIS, and precast all as the same percentage.
like
83%.
Metal.
So they're short by
Okay.
32%.
So that's why,
Right.
so to try to keep the math clear, that's why the applicant is proposing to have the precast wall panel considered an improved building material for this specific project. This is not changing our rules and regulations for everyone else. It's just for this specific project.
How long has this ordinance been in place in this form?
Well, we rewrote it. So what's that?
Well,
I wish I'd understood this so I could have drove around town.
so as far as I
Sure.
know, the big update was in 15.
Okay, that's good enough for me. Not 20 years.
No.
So, okay, then most of the big buildings did not apply this ordinance did not apply to most of our
No,
large structures.
no.
14, 15-ish, I think.
Yeah,
I can't.
that's
We
correct.
wrote it.
Which one is the classic stucco looking thing, the EPIS or the precast wall panel?
All right, rephrase your question.
Our friend here said it's like a plasticky stucco.
So that's
What
the
are we
darker
talking-
color.
We're
It's
talking
the
about that.
ethos.
That's ethos.
Okay, so if we go back to your chart, about the percentage chart, I'm sorry. So theoretically, let's say, how long has this material been out there? I mean, have we specified to say it doesn't count?
Correct.
Oh, okay.
It is clearly mentioned.
Clearly mentioned.
And so
But-
sometimes so we have as an administration, hardy board is a newer material since that material, so it's a more durable siding material that's been considered an improved material that's lasting. And so that's been accepted even though it's not specifically named.
Is
The
the
planning
precast wall
commission-
specifically named?
Yes, because it's non-decorative.
Say this again. So they're asking for it to be tell me the title again.
So they're asking for precast wall panels. So specifically what we're looking at is this color right here,
Yes.
this wall.
And they're
They're
asking that,
looking to have that be allowed as improved material, so
Building
then
improved materials.
they can move forward with the proposed facade. They are proposing to do
That-
that facade as provided.
That
as
doesn't
part of the
guarantee the
site
planning commission approves it. They just have to consider that as,
we
Well,
can have
so-
variance.
If we give them
So
a
if
variance,
we
why
grant a
would they
variance for the building material,
Yeah.
the planning commission would have very limited ability to make other changes based on just the facade material.
What she said.
and the precast surface texture is what? Smooth? It's literally smooth,
It's
no,
bumpy.
It's smooth and then it's coated, it's painted. So I don't know if that might have got approved, but it's not just for that. You see a lot of like warehouse spaces and industrial parks that just throw up like a precast, bare precast panels. Which is, very common in most big retail and big warehouses.
Does okay and it does less okay when it gets closer to the moisture. You'll notice they got it up a little bit. It's been my experience.
So what our typical, we built 6 of these stores in Michigan. When we first ventured into Michigan, we built our first store in Traverse City, and that was a new prototype. And that was this prototype. Essentially, we had precast. The front facade was just like it is here, precast. We didn't have the stone, we just had the stone base where we had the ephes, which protects the ephes, if you run carts into it, it gets hit, we have the stone base, just to protect it from the elements and any damage. But we didn't have it on the precast panels. Our typical design would be like in this lower picture, that's precast panels, got an ephes cornice up on top, and then we paint the band to match that stone. But then the other 3 sides of the building, we actually used a metal panel. That was our standard prototype. For this one, we are redesigning it to use precast around the entire building, and then we're adding the stone base all the way along the front. And then we wouldn't run that all the way around the entire building, but the main front of the building would be the precast panels, tilt up essentially, and then stained or painted the color that we want, the stone base added to that.
Mr. Chairman, I apologize for derailing Caitlin's presentation, so I'll ask that we get back on track, but I think that was pretty valuable insight to what this particular issue is, at least for me. Thank you.
I agree.
yeah,
We're gonna get to some point anyway.
Can I ask a question? So if they're asking it to be considered an approved, an improved product, what would be some of the features or benefits of this product that we would consider it's improved?
So part of what the applicant is arguing is that this is the better alternative to what their standard model is. So their other standard models just mentioned is metal siding. And so take what you would like is metal siding more decorative than the concrete that's being proposed here for that tilt up. for that precast. And so this is their, trying to meet us in the middle, with our requirements, regarding that improved building materials. That's their part of their argument. So part of the rationale with why we say this is an improved material and this is not a approved material, I wasn't here at the time, I'm not an architect. However, the intent is that the life of that building, if you pick more approved materials, you're more likely to have a longevity of a building that stands the test of time. So if everything's ethos, which is relatively easier to wear down with elements and gets damaged and things of that nature, the life of the building is cut. And so the intent is to look for the longevity, and that's why as the city, we are requiring better materials, is so we have longevity of those investments.
Has the applicant, has Blaine Farm and Fleet ever utilized stone on the side of their building versus these other, ethos or the pre-formed concrete material?
No, you just use the stone bases. I mean, we have previous prototypes where we used split face block. That was, several prototypes ago. With this design, it's pretty big deviation from some previous prototypes that we had, so.
I think of a Costco or a Walmart where it's pretty much uniform block everywhere.
Yeah, Costco's, I've seen those where they actually use like a metal panel that almost looks like it has a textured coating on it too. We've looked at that stuff too, but the precast is a good product. I mean, it's durable, and that's why it's kind of twofold. Going off of your design standards, we kind of made that decision. It's like, well, let's upgrade it to the precast all the way around. We have buildings that we've done that in the past. So in this one, we had, like I told you, the three sides where the metal building, panel or metal siding on it. So we have upgraded as far as stone goes. No, we treat that decoratively on the base, and typically we do it on the front. We quite frankly don't want to run it all the way around the entire building. What's not going to be seen and things like that. But we still like to keep it cohesive design. Yes.
So the base, that stone accent, is only on the front, and then something's different on the side. You mentioned it, but I didn't quite follow.
It's just changing color. So it'll be the precast all the way around, but you'll get this lower panel.
Once you get off the front, it's precast versus stone on the bottom.
Yeah, so we're stone, this is the service center, so that's on the Truro Road side, so it'll be stone around that, and then on this side too, on the base. And then all the way down to this corner. And then you can see where this is the metal siding that we've done on all the other ones that we've done in Michigan so far. This is where it would turn into precast all the way around. And it looks like this, but then this is a color painted to match as close as we can on that stuff.
When you said this, the bottom part, the last bottom 3 feet.
Right from here to here?
Yeah.
Yeah, and that would be everywhere.
It's just paint, a different color paint.
Yeah, that'd be the other 3 sides. So this is the precast panel.
I think it has to have.
The precast panel, they form in beds, it comes on trucks, and, it's typically 10 inches thick, double insulated. And then you tilt it up, put it all together. So on this one, where this is on here, that would actually be the stone looks like this.
So, a couple of your renderings here that we have, if I see this right, so that,
If you want me to go back to the presentation, you can kind of come back around circle.
Yes.
Yes. All right.
Take over, Caitlin.
All right, so talking about those elevations just there. That's okay. So looking at the different elevations associated with it, so this is the proposed east side, so again, that vacant business side, this is looking towards the building. We do have landscaping that is not articulated in this, so we do require buffering between B2 to B2. So there would be some trees and things of that nature that are proposed. The applicant does have a chain link fence that they are proposing to secure different portions of their property specifically, but that would be a see-through black coated chain link fence. And so with the facade, that's the east side. Then you have the south side, so that's to the left, and that's facing the freeway area. As was mentioned, that would be that precast. They have their pickup window specifically there where you can load up your different trucks and things of that nature, with the loading bays. And then the north side on the right, this is the side that would be towards Turtle Road. So you have primarily that precast, and then talked about later is the service center with those bay doors that are proposed to be glass. So kind of moving along in the building, so again, they have different glass components specifically on the Turtle side that are accounted for as part of that improved material. It kind of ends, the bookend of the ephes, that redder color ends kind of at there at the front of that facade and moves along. So as part of the applicant, as we kind of alluded to already, I'll try to cliff notes this more so, but looking at the improved building material, they're trying to meet us more or less in the middle on those different requirements. And so they've changed what their general model is, in which they have this panel that's being proposed, and are doing that stone masonry across the bottom of the entire building. Regarding the architectural component for the rooftop screening, so that's specifically requiring that you have to change your building top in which you are screening that mechanical equipment. And so they're asking for waiver from that due to the different topography situations. They anticipate that you would not have a direct, clear vision from the roadway to the building as part of the topography changes they propose. So this is going back to the original 5 standards in which you have to find all 5 in support to approve, as opposed to one specifically should be named to justify a denial. And so the first one is talking about that is prevents the property owner from using the property. So in support, the revising of their prototype model, eliminating several portions of metal paneling, which is considered more base level as opposed to precast. There are a variety of different landscaping components associated for screening, specifically from the Turtle Road side down, and the other property lines as well. In opposition, the proposed variance wouldn't unreasonably prevent the property owner from utilizing the property for the permitted use for retail, and that they could choose to have a different building material cover more of that facade facing. 2 is talking about the substantial justice to the applicant as well as other surrounding properties. In support, the applicant is proposing again changes to their facade from their prototype. The specific for the screenings, due to elevation, they're looking at that not being as impactful of an impact. In opposition, granting that variances, this is something that's required of all our commercial developments, specifically in B2, and as those developments have gone through, have complied with those various standards. 3 is talking about due to the uniqueness of the property is not a general condition of the area. So we point to the elevation specifically regarding the orientation of the building as well, having that it faces different frontages and things of that nature. In opposition, the proposal of the building material and the design of the roof is chosen by the applicant and could be considered not specifically unique to the property. 4 is talking about the need for the variance was not created by the applicant or previous property owners. So specifically the screening from the northwest and south, specifically the rooftop units. That's something that you could evaluate as far as meeting that requirement is specifically something the city is requiring, and that the proposed material is different than what other communities propose, in which they're proposing a middle ground facade option. In opposition, the variance is created by the applicant, in which they're proposing a lesser improved material as opposed to other building materials, and specifically the screening of that design to more fit their model. And 5, we talked about the spirit of the ordinance, so in support, granting the variance could be considered not detrimental to the spirit because it isn't directly impacting the well safety and welfare. However, in opposition, the intent is to look at the visual impact specifically within the city. And so granting the variance would have the lesser material, the majority of that building, in which would change that standard specifically. And the investment, though this is a generally vacant area of development, there is development as you go north into 24. So that's the first two variances.
I'll make a motion to approve the request by Michael Rosa.
Yes, Catherine, we have to open the public
Oh,
hearing
right.
for this one because we divided them out.
You forgot.
I'm ready.
Sorry,
Open public hearing,
I have a question. If,
well, it's not as much a question as an address.
Just
Statement.
address your
It's
concerns.
not a
okay,
statement.
I have,
Okay.
whatever verbiage you want to use. If you, if this is approved specifically for Blaine's, does that mean that you automatically have to approve it for, like, say Costco comes along, or it's just, so you're not setting a precedent for any other, you know?
Theoretically, that's an argument.
Yeah.
Right, are you opening yourself for this
Legally,
community
we
to
do
a-
not set
Thank you.
precedents.
So you are not opening up a possible lawsuit by another retailer that said, well, you let Blaine's do this, or you let, Walmart or whatever. I'm really concerned about that. Costing the taxpayers and, a possible lawsuit because, you let them get away with this, and then the next person says, well, they got it, so why can't we have a variance? Just some food for thought.
I'll answer that. Each variance in each case is case by case.
Okay. that's
So
what I'm
all
asking.
the things, like you were just talking about topography, other places don't have residences, other people don't have. So each case does have that.
So then
unique kind of
precedence
thing.
is not set because it's based on the case.
An attorney could go to court and order anything, or argue anything you wanted.
Sure.
Catherine here's an attorney, she could.
I have attorneys in my
What a way to
family.
throw you into the.
Boy.
No, I wasn't throwing her under the
Yeah,
bus.
thank
I
Take that.
So,
Okay, thank
there's
you.
no,
That's what I wanted to know.
Anybody else?
Yes, I'll speak, please. Sarah Anderson Smith again, Director of Real Estate Construction Facilities at Blaine's. My comment is that in working with the city administration and the planning commission, or the planning department, we felt that we've made a lot of strides to meet your requirements. To say that it's not an improved, we believe that's not correct, because like our architect had said, usually we do a pre-engineered metal building. And the reason why we do that is because that what works for a model of what we sell in our stores. Getting up to a tilt-up or a concrete panel, it's a very good material, it's a very sturdy material, it's long-lasting, we've been in business for 66, 67 years now. All of our buildings are maintained very well. The concern that I have is if we were required to do something like brick, it would become cost prohibitive for our business. We cannot do a brick building in a market like this, or in any market really. We would have to make another site selection. So we think that we have worked really hard with Caitlin to find something that meets the requirements for your city, including the stone base, because not all of our buildings have that. Not all of our buildings have monument signs, we have full signs. So we have improved a lot of things, like adding the glass garage doors, adding the different reliefs on the front to meet what the city is asking for. But there is a limit to what we can change and what we can add, and then we're gonna have to make different decisions, and we are worried about that already, so just wanted to add that.
What?
So, Mike Rosser with Blaine's Farm Fleet. I just wanted to make one little additional note for you guys regarding the precast, which is actually defined as a tilt-up panel. And the difference between a decorative tilt-up panel and just the regular tilt-up panel like we're proposing is very minimal, and Caitlin will have to verify with this. In previous models, we have used what's considered decorative, and all that is in some of those previous prototypes, and it doesn't work with this one, is exposing aggregate in the panel. So it gives it texture. And what we have found with that is it's very difficult to maintain clean, because you get the rain and water running down, and you get brown, black streaks running down in front of our building, versus this where, to Dave's point earlier, you see kind of the Chicago area, you see kind of this precast feel in all the warehouse buildings, where it's just like concrete that they tipped up. Or instead, this is coated with a high quality, durable exterior finishing with the paint. I mean, it's essentially paint. But it does really improve that. And in our opinion, that would make it an improved panel, but according to the definition, it technically is not.
Now that can that surface be, as it maybe do a fade, or can it be repainted? In your store,
Yeah,
they have
that's typically how we would maintain it. And just a quick note on our buildings in general. Blaine's, we're a family-owned business, have been for 67 years. We own every one of our properties. We built them, we own them, and we never left the community. So, I mean, our buildings, we're going to maintain and keep them. It's not like we're gonna leave and then we're gonna have a big empty box there for someone to take over and whatever. If we've had an older building that we've been in for say 30, 40 years, and then we come in and we want to build a new one, brand new, beautiful prototype, we don't leave the community. We typically find like another lot in town, do that. And then we will keep it and maintain. We don't want to build anything. First of all, I mean, just, the cost of maintaining shoddy materials is, not a good business plan, so.
Cheryl Reynolds. Yes, I have, well, not a question, a statement. Why do you want to lower the standards that we've already fixed? We're a community, we have the standards for a reason. We don't want to look like Chicago. We want to be a rural community, not a big warehouse community. It's not what we're for. So why would we lower the standards to have somebody come in because they don't want to put the money into our standards? Only because then you're shutting the door for other people to come in? No, that's not a good enough reason. You annexed that property to the city. It was a township property, you annexed it, you put electric, sewer, water, all these things into this annexed property. And now what you're saying is you're gonna let someone come in and use things that you already have said, you have a standard. Why do you not want them to meet it? I second that.
Yes, sir.
Good evening. First of all, thank you everyone for your time.
What is your name, please?
Brian Ginger. I am the owner of the property, and my company is Nature Company. We've owned this property for over 10 years. We're not talking directly about the variances here. I'm just trying to do a little background, but we've owned this property for over 10 years. To the point of the variances, this is a very challenging piece. So we've struggled to attract the right type of tenant. The fact that we've attracted Blaine's here and that they want to come into this community, I think is wonderful. And they've got a great reputation. They've got a Class A operation, and they're going to build a Class A building. I think that it couldn't be a more perfect fit. They're going to be a great partner. They're going to provide jobs. They're going to increase the tax basis here. They are going to increase property values. So there's a lot of community benefit here. I understand that there are a few people that are going to be opposed to it, but the overall benefit here, I think, is going to be tremendous. Again, we've owned this property for over 10 years. The city did come in and make this a city property, annexed it into the city. There was a heavy tax that was paid on that. It went per acre, so we were responsible for paying that tax, which is over $1 million. So it's been very challenging. We have the water, we have the sewer, we have the property, and now we have the right user to come in and build this thing. So I just want everyone to understand how difficult this is and what a great opportunity this is. So while there may be some opposition, I think we can all work together and figure out how to manage lighting and sign heights and things like that to make this piece work. So again, the topography is a very big challenge on this piece. And it being boxed in with being on 24 and, the property is sort of locked in there with all these front yards. It's challenging. So I just want everyone to keep that in mind, keep an open mind, and see how we can all work together and move this thing forward. Thank you.
Mr. Reynolds again, I'd like to know what this company can do as far as what kind of jobs they're gonna have. What's the employee amount gonna be? Is it gonna knock off employees from, say, like Home Depot, Walmart, or other places that, because they maybe could raise their wages more than these other companies.
Sorry.
No, it's,
I'm
I
sorry.
appreciate your concern. Thank you. Anybody else? We're going to close the public hearing on this request that we're speaking about now.
So I'm going to move to, that we approve the request from Mike Broseth representing Blaine's Farm and Fleet for a variance to allow the use of painted precast panels as improved building materials for the proposed building located at the southeast corner of Turl Road and M24 with the subject parcels that we've been discussing from section 7-15.01, friends F, friends 3, because it does meet all the standards in section 7-22.04E.
Support.
My own personal comment is, just by looking at your elevation of proposals, has there ever been any consideration to maybe have that color more of a brick color than that's kind of sand, so it's less of a contrast, more uniformity?
The tannish color. It's does play off of that in the rendering, it might be a little bit darker than, or vice versa, the color, but it's a color that we've been using, you know, we're always trying to build an identity, you know, and if we can put it up, you want.
Color be same as what's in Traverse?
It's
Yeah.
the same as Standale, Travers,
I'm
Holland.
familiar with that.
Yeah, if you ever, we just, the most recent one that we did was real similar to this, well, it's the same prototype, just flip models in Walker or Standale. We just did that one, so it's, yeah, that's the color that we've been doing.
So, Mr. Chairman, I realize with the 5 standards that we have to meet, and I agree with Catherine that this does meet the standard. We could go through and we could talk about it, but to death. But I'm also of the opinion that the Zoning Board of Appeals, one of our purposes is to, I don't want to say correct wrongs, because that's not correct. Take each situation as its merits, within its own merits. And I may not have caught everything Caitlin said about what improved material means. Obviously, nice brick, nice cut stone, things. I mean, Birmingham look okay. I get it for the aesthetics, but from a robustness standpoint, I would argue that these panels meet the criteria that the city is looking for from a robustness and a maintenance standpoint. Even though our ordinance may call them out differently, we have to remember that technology and materials are evolving every day, and our ordinances do not evolve every day. And that's what we're here for, is to make for sure that we're not over restricting the community. And that's my biggest reason why I'll vote in favor of the motion. Other than the fact, there's reasons to argue all the 5 points anyways, so.
Ready to vote?
Yes, we have a motion and a second.
Paul?
Aye.
Lynn?
Aye.
Jeff?
Aye.
Catherine?
Aye.
Eric?
Yes.
Dan?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Right, I move to already have a public hearing on this one to approve the request by Mike Broseth representing Blaine's Farm and Fleet for a variance to eliminate the screening of rooftop equipment for building design for proposed building located at the southeast corner of Turl Road and M24, then with the list of parcels from section 7-15.01, friends F, friends 3, because it does meet all the standards in section 7-22.04, friends E.
Support.
We have a motion and a support to the discussion.
We're on the screening, E5.
Yes.
Rooftop.
Yeah, building rooftop screening.
I think the topography definitely plays a factor into this one.
100%.
100%.
And you can't screen.
You can't hide it.
Yeah.
There's no
So
hiding it.
why make the building look ridiculous and put a larger facade? That was no brainer.
Ready for vote?
You ready for vote?
Just curious.
Is there public discussion on this point?
No.
No, that was part
It was already part of what we
It
already
was
did.
part of what she was
Oh, I
talking
just
about
had
last
a
night.
question. Are you talking about air conditioning units and stuff like that on the rooftop? What do you mean by rooftop units? What is that?
Yes, air conditioning.
Heating and whatever? Okay, that's all.
You can call the vote.
Roll call vote?
Yep.
Okay. Paul?
Aye.
Lynn?
Aye.
Jeff?
Aye.
Catherine?
Aye.
Eric?
Yes,
Dan?
Yes.
Motion passes.
With that big of a rooftop, just as, never consider solar power for your buildings?
We looked at solar.
How many?
You were saying, you looked at solar power.
We have looked at solar in Wisconsin and in Illinois so far. We have not looked at it in Michigan. So far, solar in Wisconsin has about an 8-year payoff as an investment. So we have not chosen to make that investment. But it is something I'm consistently looking into as a possibility for sustainability.
You fit right in the neighborhood.
So technology is solar. Right now, there's a line right about 3/4 of the way down Illinois where it's kind of the feedback makes sense below, but not above because of snow and imagery. But as technology improves, she's continuously looking at talking about
I'm most excited about trying it at our distribution center on our rooftop because we have such a large roof. So that I hope to be the first place where I try it.
It's exciting here in Michigan where Meyer is trying to roll out the
yeah, we got 2 more yet.
solar.
Got 2 more.
Okay.
But let's talk about solar panels, please.
Let's not talk about windows or overhead doors.
Let's do that. And you can put solar on those too when they're closed. Little stickers.
Look through this, and look through this.
Caitlin?
All right, well, last two.
Last two, yes.
So the last two, specifically are, regarding the east or the Turl side of the building specifically. So we require that 20% of the window space on the principal street, which would be Turl for this property, has to have window spacing. The applicant is proposing that they get the whole 20% relief. However, they don't need the full amount because they do propose those overhead doors to be windows. So the second part of this difference is that we require that overhead doors, whenever proposed, are not to be facing a public residential district. And so that's why they're asking for variances, because they're proposing that on the north side of the building. And so specifically, we're talking about this elevation.
So how is it front facing 24 Principal Street Turl?
Because the property line goes through that property where the access drive is, and then the rest of the parcels.
Yes.
So it's, this parcel doesn't have frontage
All
on
right,
25.
I'm sorry. Thank you.
It's a whole little technical.
Switched
Little
principal
glitch, okay.
characters here.
Yeah, and it's different arguments for different parcels too that we've already talked about tonight.
So,
Go ahead.
so go back there and say, so it's not the elevation on the top that has the window issue, it's the next one down, is that what you're saying?
Correct.
Because of the way it's sat on the property.
That's right.
Thank you, I just wanted to make sure I understood, because sometimes I get ahead of myself.
Correct. And so they are proposing a variety of different window spaces on this side, but that specific requirement is based on the principal street it has access to. And so that's the chink in the armor, I guess.
So their caveat to the garage doors that are facing Turl Road is to make those garage doors all glass?
That's right.
But they still need the variance for the 20% windows?
Yes.
Because the
Because-
garage windows here don't equal 20% of
20%.
that whole facade.
How much do they equal?
I have to check.
Why
mean-
would we give them a full, we're not past the public hearing, I'm sorry, I'll hold my question.
Sure. As opposed to, this is where the retail kind of component, and then you, I'm not sure exactly where the split is on the building, but then you get into more of the rear portion of the building where you have the loading docks and things of that nature for storage, things of that nature. So that's,
all merchandising wall.
so this is part of one of the site plans that was previously submitted. specifically regarding the building. They have a variety of landscaping proposed here along the roadway and then also the detention pond area. So zooming into specifically the road frontage, they have a variety of proposed deciduous trees, canopy trees, and evergreen trees. So a variety of this tree base does provide some additional level of screening because it's not just deciduous tree. You have shrubs that have to be at least 2.5 feet. And then you have canopy trees, which are seasonal in nature that provide canopy cover farther on. But they are proposing some evergreen trees in there as well, which would be year-round screening specifically.
When
You
you're
had to bring
talking about
pictures of
screening,
that.
are we on windows or overhead doors?
You had to bring vegetation into this, didn't you?
I did, we did.
Screenings
It wouldn't be a
So
pure ordinance.
That's
basically,
like
in
that.
essence, they're asking
We're
us
talking about
to swap
windows or
out
we're
the street
talking
side
about-
to be facing a different direction, they're gonna add more glass. So as far as like the front facade of the building, the retail front of the building would theoretically be in the 20% compliance. If it was facing Turl Road, let's say that side of the building was facing Turl Road,
No,
Would that
it would
window
still
be
be
in
11%.
compliance?
That'd still be 11%.
I'm
But
sorry.
if you were to combine the 11% that's associated with the M24 side,
so this side would be,
11% of the facade.
But it's not the front facing, whatever, so
Correct.
it can be lower. Go ahead. I'm trying to track with you, so I'm.
yeah, I'm just trying to say, is the caveat really what they're asking, hey, we're turning and facing in a different direction, but we're still trying to be in compliance with that 20% rule, even though we're facing the wrong way?
I would say aesthetically, they're trying to meet us in the middle on,
They're trying to meet us in the middle.
right, so they're trying to play towards what you would consider the commercial front, which would be the 24 side. That's when you're going towards the building, that's the side you're gonna see first. You're not gonna see Turl, realistically.
Until it's developed. I mean, for a period of time until they develop those 4 other things, you're gonna be looking over 24 right at that.
Correct, we still would anticipate most of the traffic would come from the
From
24, not from Turl. And so that's, part of their argument on the, windows portion of it and, which I'll get into with the standards.
But I think it was important, you mentioned landscaping, now I think it is important, because I think if cognizant of our neighbors, their neighbors, the site neighbors, if you're gonna have, someone backing out or headlights coming out of that during the fall and winter, you wanna try to minimize light pollution, irritants. So I think aggressive, robust landscaping should be
Yeah.
a site plan issue, but I hope they stick to that.
It plays into, how much of this are you going to see versus not? And so
Right.
part of their meeting us halfway is that they're proposing, they're only required to do deciduous, trees and shrubs. They are choosing to add evergreen trees as a mixture to help with that screening effort on the Turl side.
What is the height of the building, if I could ask that? Facing-
Roughly 30 feet. 28 feet, I believe.
So you haven't seen any elevations of their proposal for that they're gonna do for the greenbelt area? Nothing yet, right?
I don't know if you need.
Well, you're talking about trees and shrubs and stuff.
So this is the landscape plan that I have.
Right.
But as far
I said-
as a,
That's
they're
an
not
elevation,
proposing a
that's an
berm, and so they aren't required to show me a cut section to show from the road to the building what does that
Gotcha, I
look
didn't
like.
say they were, I just said you hadn't seen anything.
Right.
Okay.
I didn't want them to get confused saying that I would require,
I
I
got
would
where you're
not.
going, but where we're going from is we're gonna consider some of these things as being blocking some, essentially blocking some, any incursion into the neighborhood. It'd be nice to, I know they don't have to, you don't have to. It'd be nice to see that because it would buttress our case, to see rather than talking about it. We've done this before with greenbelts, then we get done and whoa, we thought we were looking at something much more pervasive than the greenbelt we got when the project was over. I've been sitting up here a lot of years and I've seen that happen, so I want to make sure wherever we go, we've got some pretty, real effort on the greenery to
help offset the window.
Yeah. We can only deal with that so much here, but
And so
we
this
can make it a
is-
condition.
So this is zooming in what it would look like with
That's
the
the whole
additional
point.
glass
Yeah.
component specifically on that area.
Yeah.
So it's an improvement from, whatever the
What your
RSV standard.
requirement is, right.
And I appreciate that kind of slide too, because it is a pop out for, it's not flush with the building, it sits out by itself, the service area.
Correct.
Yeah, yeah. All right, I don't think we've opened the public hearing, have we?
No.
Okay.
She hasn't been through her standards yet either.
Okay.
Oh, she's not
just go
done.
through standards.
She's not done yet.
Joe,
Okay.
get it back to you.
It's a long night.
I
So we have our 5 different standards for that. So talking about the first standard, we're talking about it would unreasonably prevent the property owner from using the property in support. The applicant is proposing to maintain the most functional layout, circulation, and safety-wise for the proposed building and associated uses, as opposed to opposition is that they could add the additional window space on the northern side, so it's a choice, and also the orientation of the building that they're proposing. 2 is talking about the other property owners in the same zoning district and that a lesser variance wouldn't be necessary. And so looking at in support, they are proposing a variety of other factors that play into the screening of that building, specifically landscaping. We acknowledge that most of the large traffic is on M24, and so that's where they have a lot of their glass components of the building regarding other requirements. And so they meet the required total amount of glass if you were to add that up over both frontages that you can see. So 24 plus Turl, they need that 20% intent. As opposed to in opposition, the applicant, this is required for all of our commercial B2 districts. Unique to the property and not a general condition of the area due to the service provided, the specific lot that's being divided, looking at the best configuration for pedestrians and motor vehicles. That's the proposed component. Specifically, when we talk about the overhead doors, that percentage component, we're looking at what's facing Turl Road, the additional screening that's included as part of that decision. In opposition, you could consider that there isn't anything unique specific to, they could add more window area or change that use from this side of the building to the other side of the building. Yes, sir.
Could we propose an approval when we get there to say a combination of windows between the two sides?
It's part of the rationale, so I don't know that you
Would need to.
right. So you would still grant the variance. You could still grant the variance that 100%, or you can say that 10% regarding the facade facing on Turl, because the balance is the other 10 that they have on that. So instead of saying 100% to the 20%, you could say 10% variance in which the glass doors.
The glass doors would hit the requirement.
If you made.
Right. The variance.
No problem.
Didn't mean to interrupt you there.
No, that's okay.
Last standard is talking about the intent and spirit of the ordinance and public safety welfare. By approving this variance, it would not appear that the public safety welfare, the intent behind a lot of the overhead doors and the glass is to have that increased sense of welcomeness to that property and things of that nature to minimize any potential aesthetic concerns. So in opposition, they aren't specifically meeting some of those specifically, but again, we have the different frontages that we're playing towards and then some different screening and things of that nature. So that is my report.
Thank you, Caitlin.
Thank you.
So, excellent as always, thank you. Yes, okay. Open public
Everybody left.
So Mike Ross with Blake's Farm.
The important part of the meeting here.
The one comment I want to make is just to be very careful about how you word it if you do approve it, because when it comes down to it, the overhead doors are still overhead doors. Even though we're proposing glass to try to meet the intent, they're still not windows. They're overhead doors. So you would have to specifically word it correctly to meet the letter, to make your variance meet the intent, right? So I just want to kind of caution.
I wasn't gonna let him do it anyway. I said I wasn't gonna let him do it anyway.
Okay, Paul. I'm waiting on you, buddy.
But I think it's pretty much just Blaine's people, right?
Like, yeah, that's where we were going, that's what.
Okay, close.
Well, what's your play?
Well, I guess I want to hear what you guys think. I don't have any problem with the relief as stated, frankly. I'm concerned about the overhead doors facing Carroll. I think people are gonna feel, well, you know, it's a little industrial, it's a little bit this, a little bit that. Down the street, you got Bellfire, and their doors are facing away, and there's been efforts along the way as things were okay to keep the doors away. Parts of Old Lapeer, we do have the doors there. The nature of the business is such that, you know, they're a company that operates on semi-urban, just with the fringe, a lot of their business has to do with places that are transitional, like Lapeer, where you have a lot of, so you have agrarian people, you have, sure, yeah, that's their business. So we're not supposed to change the rules for the business, but they need the garage doors in order to operate, and it makes no sense to move them around back just because, in my view, it's just a lot of hobnobbing around. So I don't have any problem doing it on their side. And I don't think that's, in order to do that, they have to have the variance. So I have no problem with the variance. Either one of them. The last two remaining. That's my opinion. I'd like to hear what you guys think.
I just have a question. So the gentleman up there, he said we have to be very careful that you state that the overhead doors are considered part of the glass solution. But we have some samples here.
Go ahead.
That's kind of what he said. That's what I
Yeah,
understood. But we have some samples here of what, is that true that we have to make this, when we make a motion, if we make a motion, that we have to stipulate that the glass, those glass doors are part of the glass equation?
Only if we don't give
No.
them the full 20%.
No. Right.
Which defeats the, which
Exactly.
gives a variance to the entire requirement. If we give them less than 20%, then we have to justify the garage doors as being glass solution.
And he was saying,
window,
what
yada,
he was
yada.
saying is don't do that, because if you're
Yeah, it's
talking about
I'm
opening a
sorry,
can
what?
of worms for other situations.
Cleaner, and I think in the future it'd be
Yeah, and also,
interpreted easier if you give the full.
yeah,
And the other thing you can do is, you can relate, and that motion's not drafted that way, but you could say as shown. So you approve the variance regarding the glass facade window area and overhead doors as provided. And so as long as they're consistent with that facade, they get their variance
the other thing.
without tying numbers to
Yeah,
it.
I'm not worried about that because planning commission's gonna make them do that.
Yeah, and then the other thing, go ahead, Danny.
Won't they? I mean, we don't have to protect the glass in the garage doors, do we? You think we do here?
Yes.
That-
Yes,
what
okay,
I'm saying-
give them the full 20%,
Okay.
does have to be glass.
But what I'm saying is that the motion can be is that if
As
you're
presented.
entertaining approval, rather than playing the numbers game, is that you would say you would do approval for the amount of window area and glass overhead doors as shown,
Right.
as provided on the elevation, and you're approving both variances.
I hope you two down there are writing notes, because I'm not gonna touch that with 3 foot pole trying to figure it out.
You will?
Well, yeah. So,
So.
so Mr. Chairman, I just want to make one statement before we close this out tonight. I think it's important that we be a good, a reasonable community. As Paul pointed out, we're kind of on the fringe of rural versus urban, and, you know, we're a transitional area. But I think it's important for our corporate partners to understand that veiled threats and attitudes need to be checked at the door in official meetings. I don't take kindly to that type of language and that approach. We look at each of these variances individually, a lot of rules, the 5 requirements, and we consider them. I personally, as anybody who knows me, I am always in favor of the property owner if I can at all, you know, find a way to give them what they want. I don't need to be threatened in any way, such a form. So I just think that's important for our corporate partners and property owners to understand that. But with that said,
I didn't know what it.
I will
Oh,
make,
you're gonna,
oh, you want to do it?
I was gonna.
No,
I was gonna
go,
do
Dan,
the-
please.
I was gonna do the last one only because I wanted
The doors.
I wanted to include the words an enhanced green belt, which they have agreed to.
Okay, I'll do the first one.
I have a question though.
Just make sure we know what we're talking about.
Will a tire and service center have the same hours as the whole store as far as just light and?
It's gonna be better.
Because I
than what
think
the
Stan has
state
approved
does.
that until.
Yes,
But
sir.
that's
I
already
think so.
reflected in the report.
Yes, I think our hours are.
I'm sorry, I'm having two
Go
conversations
ahead.
at the same
Well, Kim
time.
had concerns.
And I'm like
Go
doing
ahead.
this, I'm like
I wanted to hear
watching,
what
I'm
you
watching
said,
the ball go back and forth, so.
You felt
I
that
don't understand why you're bringing the landscaping.
Did you-
only on the last
Mr.
issue
Chairman, did you get your tire?
involving
your
the door.
question? Answered.
Part of that is a screening, whatever screening.
You're not getting any variances to the required screening of the landscaping.
Pardon me?
They're not.
No, but I can put a condition on the door, okay, of increasing the minimal requirement on the thing, which they already said they were gonna do. If it makes you less comfortable, does it, Kim?
Yeah.
You feel like you'd have to defend that?
I think it'd be a nightmare for Caitlin.
Do you? Okay, we'll just take their word at it. All
No,
right.
but I want to just say to that, with this is a very important site, and I think, talking about the land moving earth around, I don't know if it's proposal, but I'm very concerned about the neighbors and precedent. So I think whether we can and say it should be part of an earthen berm along Turl too to minimize, we don't want to reduce your total visibility, of course, but you know what, we don't know what's going to happen to the solar fields in 30 years. That may be taken down, you might have a subdivision there. So I think we need to be a little bit cognizant of, that's why I'm very protective of the neighbors, even though that's a evolving zone and we want more big box stores and south of the freeway and all that, but, so I'm just, that's why landscaping is important.
Well, they have a
Discussion,
minimum
so
requirement, and that's what I was kind of trying to
And
address.
that is part
That's why I'm
of
asking about the hours and the light, because I would not want to be looking at that at 9 o'clock at
I
night.
have an answer on auto service. Our auto service center closes at 6 PM, which is 2 hours earlier than our store. 8 AM to 6 PM.
Okay.
And then you were gonna say something about landscaping or,
So the staff rationale behind some of the basis of the variance is tied to, based on what they're proposing, which is the mixture of vegetation, the deciduous evergreen trees and shrubs. So you don't have to include that as part of your rationale, as part of
because
it.
they've already written it somewhere that was one of their ways of trying to meet our needs, just putting that in there.
Correct.
Thank you.
I just want to say, we're giving them a lot, we're moving a lot of garage doors, never had them out facing except in the old parts of Lapeer have them. And, there's a lot of variances here, there's a lot of things, and we hope it's a successful thing for you. Dan, if you want to do both the motions, just remember at the first one, to use the words as shown at the end of it. Okay,
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion to approve the request by Mike Forseth, representing Blaine Farm and Fleet, for a 20% window area variance for the north side of the building located at southeast corner of Turl Road and M24, as shown in the proposal. Good, Kim?
Shown in the proposal,
Support.
As provided?
in the submitted proposal.
Yeah, however you want to document the
I got it.
ZBA minutes. Parcels as listed from section 71501 F3, because it does meet all standards, section 722.04E, and we have a support.
You did say the 20%, right?
Yes.
Okay, we have a motion and support.
And who supported Lynn?
Eric,
Oh, Eric.
any further discussion? Roll call.
aye.
Okay, Paul and I, Lynn,
Aye.
Jeff,
Aye.
Eric,
Yes.
Dan. On the windows.
Mr. Chair, I have a motion to approve the request by Mike Forsyth, representing Blaine's Farm and Fleet, for a variance to allow red doors to face a public street for the parcels located at the southeast corner of Turl Road and M24. All those parcels from section 7-15.01 F3 because it does meet all the standards in section 7-22.04E.
Support. Okay. Motion and support there. Support.
Discussion?
Aye.
Paul?
Yeah, any discussion?
Lynn?
Aye.
Jeff?
Aye.
Eric?
Yes?
Dan?
Yes. Yes, sorry.
Final motion is carried.
Motion to adjourn.
I've never seen so many unanimous in one night. I've never seen so many.
No, because it's usually.
Okay, I would like a better understanding of
Not because,
improved material in the future.
good luck with it.
Is it robustness or is
Thank
it
you.
visual? It needs to be pretty clear because if we're gonna start
That was-
forcing
Good luck,
visual
guys.
Birmingham type facades, that's a big deal.
So
Oh, yeah. I agree.
Oh, hi.
Eric? But I don't know that anybody said,
Nobody did ask me, but I still made the motion. I figured it was good.
Any support? I finally
Unless
supported
Caitlin
something.
needs to keep us for
I
something.
did that just for you, buddy.
Okay.
I was like, no, hope it's gonna be good.
Jumping over the green. Planning commission says no. If you're gonna give them something to
One hammer. I can picture gray buildings. I can picture gray buildings down in Auburn Hills. Industrial buildings.